Chapter 1029. What happened in the dry plain region and the ultimate plain region had already caused quite a stir. Judging from the scale of the commotion, it was safe to assume that everyone in the god realm, from the leaders of the major factions to the common folk who were at a loss of what to do, had already heard about the commotion. Of course, the latter would at most know that something like this had happened. They might not even take it to heart. After all, the death of a heavenly god could not cause such a huge phenomenon. However, the major factions in the god realm did not share the same opinion. Those who knew about such a huge phenomenon would naturally know about it. Those who did not, however, would probably panic when they saw that a bunch of big shots were about to make a move. At the very least, Yin Nuoxing could clearly sense from the pillar of creation that a thought formed from the emotions of almost half of the living beings in the god realm was spreading. Normal people would not be able to sense it, but he could sense it from the pillar of creation. "Oh, your words are about to come true." Yin Nuoxing glanced at Little White and said, "The hundreds of extremely bright stars hanging high above the model of the god realm were gradually growing brighter. They raised their heads and looked at the scene outside their hiding place. On the horizon, they could see a row of stars arranged in a row. They were the real stars that were arranged in the sky above the god realm. They were formed by the power of the hundreds of gods. Young Temple Master, we have detected a huge energy fluctuation. I'm afraid that the range of the energy fluctuation is..." A nervous voice suddenly sounded in Yin Nuoxing's mind. When he heard the name, he immediately understood that it was someone from the 9 deities' temples. Moreover, it should be someone from the upper echelons of the 9 deities' temples. Otherwise, they would not have mentioned the two words Primoja. Someone who knew that he was once the 10th Temple Master was one of the upper echelons of the 9 deities' temples. There's no need to be afraid. It affected half of the void, not just the god realm. However, I don't think there will be much of a reaction outside of the god realm, so there's nothing to worry about. So, why did you come looking for me?" Yang Kai slowly took out a jade slip and sent his soul energy into it. "The Great Elder, the Hall Master, and the Vice Hall Master have all gone out. We only just realized that they weren't here. We can't contact them even if they've left behind a wisp of consciousness. I'm afraid that they're not in the god realm. This matter has affected a lot of people, and we don't know how to deal with it." In the Golden Temple, the Hall Master's eyebrows were twitching so hard that they looked like they were about to cramp up. None of the people in charge of the 9 deities' temples were around, so they had no choice but to look for the most special person in the 9 deities' temples. "Oh, the shrine should be fine, right? That wave doesn't have any destructive power. It's just a message wave," Yin Nuoxing asked. "That's not it. But it has alarmed many ancient factions. The Qin family and the Xian family have sent word that something terrible has happened," the Golden Temple Elder said nervously. "Relax, it's nothing terrible. It's just in the ultimate plane region. A heavenly god who survived from at least the ancient era has just died." "Yes, he just died. I've confirmed it myself," Yin Nuoxing said in a relaxed tone. The other end was silent for a few seconds. Then, the Golden Temple Elder cried out in shock. "Ah, a heavenly god. That's why I said calm down." Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes and picked her ears. She said in annoyance, "It's just a wave of the void caused by the death of a heavenly god. It's not a big deal. The remaining post-deities in the god realm, that's probably the only ones left. They've all been alarmed. However, the pressure from the laws of heaven and earth is severe, so there won't be much trouble. However, some small hedgehogs will probably be released. Recently, the disciples of the shrine have been told to keep a low profile. Oh, our disciples are pretty low-key. It's a rule. Hedgehogs." The Golden Temple Elder was confused. Heirs of the gods, disciples of the gods, children of the gods, and so on. They're all small, insignificant troubles. Don't worry too much about it. This day will come sooner or later. It's just that it's been brought forward. The elder was a little confused, but he still understood what he should do. He nodded and said, "Then I'll arrange it." Yin Nuoxing yawned and said, "If there's nothing else, summon back all the disciples with low cultivation base. Those who are below the primal god tier and ultimate god tier." That doesn't seem right. Don't bring back those who are far away. Let me think about it. Anyway, just let them keep a low profile. There's going to be an upheaval in the demon world soon. Understood. Also, Yin Nuashing pondered for a moment. She put her hands together and rubbed them for a moment. Then, she said in a low voice, "It's about time to open the treasury." Are you talking about the treasuries of the 9 shrines? We need to use those. The elder of the Golden Divine Palace swallowed. Those were the supreme treasures sleeping in the deepest part of the 9 shrines. They were the supreme treasures left behind by the great masters of the 9 shrines. It's better to be prepared. I like to be one step ahead in everything. Yin Nuashing nodded. She waved her hand and said, "Take out the Star River seal, the Mountain River diagram, the Chaos Celestial Star, and the Ring of Light and Shadow." Actually, the last 2 were a set. Guan girl, and I made them together. The last sentence was said a little softly. Yin Nuashing sighed softly in her heart, shook her head, and said, "For should be enough. It's just a precaution. Just hang them on the ceiling of the 9 divine temples. We'll talk about the rest when the time comes." I understand. The elder of the Golden Divine Palace swallowed hard. The secret pavilion of the 9 divine temples was the deepest part of the treasury. There was almost no defensive power there. After all, no one could break into the space where the 9 divine temples were. Only the 9 divine temples higher-ups knew about this place. Even if they stole it, it would be fine. Without the permission of the temple leader and the others, they could not take it out of the space. However, it was easy to just take it out and put in the space for protection. Anyone could do that. Weapons of that level did not have their own consciousness, but they had special rules set by their creators. When no one was controlling them, they would automatically follow the rules and do something else, so all they had to do was take them out. Although he did not think that the 4 weapons would ever be used, it was better to be safe than sorry. The 9 divine temples were the strongest guardian force in the gods' world. However, the previous temple leader had disappeared into the stars. 9 divine spirits had gone missing, and Light Yuan King himself had gone missing. Anyone who could become a divine spirit in this era was worthy of respect. To be able to stand out in the face of such horrible rules, someone who could do that was equivalent to the top of the group of people in the far ancient era. However, it seemed that not many people knew about them. The gods and heavenly gods that still existed in the divine realm were all quite ancient. If a young god were to appear at this time, he would be revered by everyone and would be able to dominate half an era. As far as he knew, the previous Hall Master and the others were actually not very old. They were only a little over 3 trillion years old. They were still very young, or at least they were quite young in a sense. The masters of the 100 or so stars that appeared in the divine realm were all above 10 trillion years old. Brother Nuashing, among the 5 divine spirits, 2 of them are from the previous era, right? Lon Xian pulled his sleeve to pull him back to reality. Then, he heard her speak. There were 3 divine spirits in this era. The ways of the birth of a divine spirit cannot be concealed. Otherwise, I would not have gone through so much trouble to jump into the reincarnation cycle. Cough, cough. According to the records, there were 3 divine spirits in this era. The last one appeared in the 133rd era. If I am not mistaken, he is probably one of the 5 stars. Yin Nuashing pointed at the 3 stars that were as bright as the sun. What if there's an accident? Xiaobai looked up. Then there may be more than 5 divine spirits. There are many possibilities. They have escaped to the outside world to hide. They are completely dormant. These are not seen by the Pillar of Creation. There are all kinds of possibilities. Yin Nuashing spread her hands and sighed. The Pillar of Creation's ability to monitor the world was very powerful. However, it could not do anything to a dormant divine spirit. If the divine spirit insisted on hiding, the Pillar of Creation would not be able to find him. This time, the birth of the Pillar of Creation is probably due to the accumulation of several incidents. Yin Nuashing murmured in her heart. Quarter moon announced the end of the primeval age. The energy waves that erupted in the Ganyuan region and the Jiuyin region finally blew out those old monsters who had been sleeping for a long time. Lon Xian stared at the hundreds of stars that were shining in the sky. After a few minutes, Mei Mao said, "They're starting to dim." Yin Nuoxing was also paying attention. The light of those shining stars was starting to fade. The turbulent energy and rules between heaven and earth began to calm down. However, the great waves caused by them would definitely not be quelled so easily. This was probably just the beginning. At this time, the commotion was still spreading. Many ancient places in the realm of the gods were emitting terrifying energy waves. There was a monstrous energy tumbling. It was as if there were peerless masters in hibernation. The terrifying energy spread out for millions of miles. Half of the Ganyuan region fell into absolute silence. It was really a dead silence. The energy had cooled down, and thousands of beasts were prostrating. The creatures that lived there could feel the supreme pressure that was spreading between heaven and earth. The extreme east of the Ganyuan region, the south of the Ganyuan region, and the extreme west of the Taiyuan region. On the border between the two regions, the Eastern Sea region, the Western Sea region, the Northern Wasteland, and the Southern Plains of the Divine Land were emitting extremely powerful energy waves. Some ancient broken altars were also emitting extremely terrifying auras. Heaven and earth were trembling under these auras. The rumbling sound of Tao kept ringing. Those who sensed the fluctuations felt their scalps tingling. Were those peerless masters in the realm of the gods about to come out? Was it because of the energy waves? Something big has happened. This was the thought in everyone's mind. The 9 divine temples, the 8 ancient families, and many other transcendental forces were also paying attention to these places where the energy waves were surging. They were not the only ones. Those who knew some secrets in the world of cultivators felt their hearts skip a beat. They instinctively felt that something was going to happen. However, they did not know exactly what was going to happen. They just felt that something was very wrong. In the Taiyuan region, Xingming City, there was also a chaotic scene at this time. Cultivators were flying back and forth in the sky in a hurry. The ordinary people on the ground were at a loss. They were also very nervous because of the tense atmosphere. They had all returned home early. In the north, ice and snow have collapsed. A huge black shadow is swallowing the heavens and the earth. The terrifying aura has turned the area of 1,000,000 miles into a land of death. The earth has dried up, the space has collapsed, and even the Emperor Godmasters are dead. In the south, near the Ganyuan region, millions of mountains have almost been blown up. The aura of peerless masters is coming out from there. In the east, near the heaven abyss, there are earth-shattering cries. The time barrier has collapsed. Stars have also fallen. There were similar disturbances in the other origin regions. All kinds of information were flying everywhere. Even the ordinary people received information from the world of cultivators. They felt that the world was about to fall into chaos. Everyone was panicking. However, there were no signs of panic spreading for the time being. The world of gods was not very peaceful in the first place. The ordinary people were struggling to survive the chaos in the world of cultivators. Usually, it looked peaceful, but in fact, there were undercurrents surging. Everyone knew this. Therefore, when they saw the sudden signs of chaos, their nerves were already somewhat tenacious. They would not be thrown into chaos just because of a little chaos. 1. In the sky of the world of gods, golden lines that stretched across the entire sky suddenly appeared. They stretched from one end of the sky to the other and intertwined in the sky. It seemed to encompass the entire world of gods. Only by looking at those lines closely could one see some clues. Those were not lines. Instead, they were huge arrays that were millions or even hundreds of millions of miles long. From the ground, the array formation that appeared at the furthest end of the world of gods did indeed look like a golden line. It was like a huge barrier. Everyone was at a loss when they saw it. In such a tense atmosphere, they saw a strange phenomenon that they had never seen before, which made them a little crazy. It was as if these things had been discussed beforehand and exploded at the same time, not giving them any time to breathe. This is Yin Nuashing was also astonished when she saw those incomparably huge arrays connecting into lines that appeared on the model of the world of gods. Every golden line connected into a ring that surrounded the world of gods in 3 layers. The law layer at the bottom of the world of gods was also surrounded by 3 rings of interwoven lines made of arrays. This work, what kind of huge project is this? Whitey's tail bristled when she saw this. Yin Nuashing swallowed her saliva with difficulty. That sacred, supreme aura, that power, that is the barrier left behind by the first-generation great deity, the god of destruction. There are also many forbidden spells that cover the entire sky of the world of gods. The barrier is to protect the world of gods. To be more specific, it is to protect an extremely fragile seed in the world of gods. The forbidden spells are only to allow the world of gods to have the same normal, living conditions as other planets with life. Yin Nuashing's pupils shrank slightly. The size of the world of gods determined that it would definitely not be able to have the same normal living conditions as other planets with life. Therefore, those great deities who created the world of gods laid down forbidden spells to allow the world of gods to have the same living conditions as other planets with life. These were all mentioned in the legends of creation. I never thought that I would actually be able to see these one day. Yin Nuashing was very excited. These were all the works left behind by the first-generation great deities. Those arrays, those forbidden spells, all of them were profound. Yin Nuashing's cheeks twitched. She grabbed her long hair in frustration. I can't understand them at all. When she accidentally saw these arrays and forbidden spells, she originally thought that she would be able to comprehend something from them. However, in reality, she couldn't even understand those things. She was a divine array master, a heavenly deity array master, but she couldn't even understand one of the arrays. She had even deliberately chosen one that didn't seem that complicated or profound, but in the end, of course, how could a heavenly deity possibly understand the things left behind by the first-generation great deity? That is a completely different domain. Little White was also very shocked. After hearing what he said, she couldn't help but roll her eyes. Wasn't this nonsense? The supreme heavenly deities were not on the same line as everything in this world. How could someone from the 3 elemental realms understand someone from the 8 elemental realms? It was obviously impossible. Therefore, everything that those supreme heavenly deities did wasn't something that ordinary people like them could understand. In front of the supreme heavenly deities, ordinary heavenly deities weren't much higher than ordinary people. But why is that barrier appearing now? Could it be that it's a threat to the divine world? Lon Xian didn't understand. First, the pillar of creation appeared, and now, these strange things had also appeared. Was the divine world suffering from bad feng shui recently? Was it because it was plagued with disasters? I think that's probably the reason. Yin Nuashing sighed bitterly. She scratched her beautiful hair and pointed at the slightly dim stars floating in the sky above the divine world. She said, "The laws of heaven and earth in the divine world are greatly suppressed." Suddenly, a group of powerful life forms that can interfere with the laws of heaven and earth appeared, so the barrier jumped out by itself to stabilize the laws of heaven and earth, right? Are you worried that the laws of heaven and earth would collapse all of a sudden? But shouldn't that be done by the pillar of creation? Little White tilted her head in confusion. You said that the pillar of creation has the ability to stabilize the laws of heaven and earth, right? At a critical moment, they can support the collapsing laws of heaven and earth. And at a dangerous moment, they will also destroy that part of the laws of heaven and earth. Yes, that's right. Yin Nuashing was stunned. Yes. Shouldn't that part of the laws of heaven and earth be completed by the pillar of creation? She didn't feel any strange movement from the pillar of creation, and then the protective barrier of the first god appeared. After pondering for a while, Yin Nuashing jumped up angrily. "You ask me? Ask the ghost." Little White smiled bitterly. "Aren't you the controller of the pillar of creation? Go ask it." But that iron pillar doesn't seem to be able to speak, so it's probably useless to ask it. The pillar of creation detected that the laws of the divine world were in disorder, but they were all within the threshold range, and it wouldn't make any automatic adjustments. Otherwise, the divine world would shake again, and those people would probably collapse. The thought gradually became more anxious and irritated. This was a thought formed by the common emotions of tens of trillions of life forms. It was captured by the pillar of creation, and it could also listen to this voice. It's gone. Lon Scheener watched as the stars gradually dimmed and finally disappeared. The various kinds of disorder that could be seen on the model of the divine world slowly returned to normal. Yin Nuoxing glanced at it and sighed. This doesn't mean that it's over. Chapter 10:30. Many places in the divine realm that were thought to be barren and barren suddenly emitted a shockingly powerful wave of energy that caused the sky and the earth to tremble. However, this wave of energy did not last for a very long time. It was as if it was a fleeting moment. It came with an astonishing momentum and left rather quickly as well. It was a long story, but so many things happened at the same time. The chaos in the various regions, the tense atmosphere in the cities, and the movements of the various giants in the divine realm happened at the same time. The scope of the impact of this incident was simply too huge. If a city was a microcosm of a world, then this time it was as if all the regions in the heavens were moving at the same time. I know what all of you are waiting for. I know what all of you are seeking. The price that I have paid is unparalleled in this world. However, now is not the time. Is not the time yet. Yin Nuoxing muttered to himself in a low voice. It seemed as if he was talking to those people, but it also seemed as if he was talking to himself. Most of those people would know what he knew. The great reversal of the laws of heaven and earth 1,000 years later was not something that could not be detected by the heavenly gods. It was not impossible for the gods to know about this as well. At most, it would take a little effort. To others, it was a secret among secrets. However, this world was not too hidden from the gods and heavenly gods. The things that could be hidden in the divine realm had been hidden from that ancient era until now. Moreover, there was probably no chance for them to uncover it in the future. Most of the things that could be uncovered had already been uncovered. This was for the heavenly gods, while the ordinary people were still trapped in this mysterious world. Generation after generation, time passes by mercilessly. Dozens of eras are like shooting stars in the sky, sending away generations of people and ushering in new ones. This world is always in the cycle of reincarnation, but it will never repeat itself. What can we hope for? We can only silently crawl under the long river of time and wait for the day when we can leap forward. Before that day, we still cannot transcend. Yin Nuoxing sighed sadly. The ancient era has passed, but the wandering souls of the old era still exist in the new era. They will not dissipate. They will not dissipate. They are the stubborn immortals of this world. They have paid an immeasurable price and waited for a long time. The dilapidated temples and ancient altars have already fallen silent. Who still remembers the time when incense was burning, when the bells rang and the grand sacrificial altars were ringing? Everything has passed away. The pioneers are also in a distant place, staggering. Their eyes are blank, and their footsteps are no longer firm. Luli murmured and sighed faintly. They were the wandering souls of that era, the proof of their eternal existence. She looked at the dim stars and lowered her eyes slightly. Her jade-like hand paused in the middle of the chessboard. She pinched a black chess piece between two fingers and gently pressed it in the center of the chessboard. There was no one on the other side of the chessboard, but a white chess piece fell down by itself. It landed on the edge of the chessboard, making May Mouse squint slightly. Even so, the great ancient star will once again ignite the indestructible star remains, illuminating this star field, burning this world. The archaic era will exist forever. We will never die, Yin Nuoxing murmured. He clenched his teeth stubbornly, and an indestructible flame was burning in his eyes. They were reviving, and he was not willing to die just like that. Brother Nuoxing, what did you say? Lon Xian blinked and looked at Mei Mao. He spoke softly, so neither of them could hear him clearly. Nuashing took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. After a while, he smiled and shook his head. My thoughts drifted for a while. Nothing, let's go. They could do whatever they want. We have our own things to do. He smiled and held Lon Exainer's hand as they walked out. Do you have any plans for those deities? They can't come out for the time being, but what about those little ones? As for the children of deities, there should be some, right? Little White had a strange look on his face. They're just little hedgehogs. As usual, I will ignore them if they don't come looking for me. I don't have time to deal with those little kids. As for your question, how would I know? Later deities, well, their ability to reproduce is slightly weaker. It is lower than that of ordinary people and early deities. Yin Nuashing also had a strange look on his face. Why? Lon Exener asked curiously. Why? Yin Nuashing smacked his lips. As he walked out, he said, they're just too strong, so they're slightly affected. However, later deities have a long lifespan, and deities live forever. If they want to create humans or other things, they have a lot of time. He thought for a moment, then said, I remember an old buddy of mine, an Empyrean god. He married 4 women, and in the end, he only had 1 son after 10 years. Shameless 10 years, he said it himself. Little White had a strange look on his face. That was a little too low. From this, it could be seen how low the birth rate of deities was. The lowest was from ordinary people, and the highest was from early deities. If necessary, they could have 4 or 5 children in 10 years. There was still time to rest in between. Cough, cough. The normal way, that's right. It is not normal. I suddenly feel that this topic is gradually sliding into the abyss. Why don't we stop here? Yin Nuashing shuddered and said quickly. Lon Xian and Little White also nodded helplessly. If this topic continued, it would not be able to stop. If you asked him how he looked at those deities who were startled, he did not want to look at them, and he was too lazy to do so. Anyway, it was just a matter of time. If it was brought forward, then so be it. At most, it would make him feel a little more pressured. Nothing else. Therefore, those who needed to repair the pillar of creation still had to run around to repair it. Those who needed to work still had to work. To put it bluntly, the world would continue to turn no matter what happened. However, the road ahead would either be smooth or bumpy. Neither of these could stop the rotation of the huge wheel. He had just used the teleportation function of the Pillar of Creation to teleport the 3 of them to a hidden location of the Pillar of Creation. Now that they had popped up and checked the map, they realized that they had been teleported to the center of the ultimate plane region. However, they were still in the east, which brought them closer to the next origin pillar. From the southeast of the ultimate plane region to the center of the east. Little White scratched his head. If there is such a fast way, why do we have to fly around? Can't we just teleport to the next pillar of creation? That's a good idea. Yin Nuashing sighed. This teleportation is random, dear. It would not be a problem to send you from the southeast of the ultimate plane region to the northwest of the ultimate plane region. Moreover, there are so many pillars of creation in such a large region. Who knows where they will be sent? Are you playing a game with probability? I would rather fly by myself. Little White scratched his tiger fur. After thinking for a while, he felt that it seemed to make sense. He did not say anything. Yin Nuashing waved her hand and condensed a fire phoenix. The 3 of them sat on it and were about to fly away when suddenly a shout came from afar. Ladies, please wait a moment. Yin Nuashing was slightly stunned. She turned her head away reflexively. Lon Xian could not help but laugh secretly. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes. He was already used to it. When she turned her head, she saw a person walking in the air with his hands behind his back. He walked tens of thousands of meters with one step. Soon, he appeared in front of them. It was a man with a handsome face. He was different from Yin Nuashing's alluring beauty. He displayed a masculine elegance. He wore a black tight-fitting robe. His long hair was tied into a high ponytail with a silver hairband. It hung down his waist. His eyebrows revealed a heroic spirit and well-hidden arrogance. If he raised his eyebrows slightly, the latter would undoubtedly be revealed. More importantly, his aura was as deep as the ocean. It carried a natural coercion. It was noble and unshakable. It was as if a king had appeared. A deity. Lon Xin glanced at him. She was a little surprised, but that was all. As for his appearance, she had long been concerned about the person beside her. The man walked in front of the fire phoenix and smiled at the two of them. When he saw Little White, he added, "Oh, there's also a young man." Just now, a grand vision appeared in the ultimate plane region. Do the three of you know where that vision came from? The man smiled faintly and nodded his head. Yin Nuoxing's expression did not change. However, she could not help but mutter in her heart. She felt that this guy might have been thrown out by them. She thought for a while and tilted her head in confusion. Are you talking about the golden light just now? I'm not sure. My eyes hurt. I only took a glance and then turned my head. I think it should be in that direction. He calmly pointed to the east. The man glanced at him and nodded to himself. Normal people would not be able to stare at the divine light for long, let alone a demigod. The man smiled and nodded his head slightly. Then, he turned around and walked toward the east. When he was far away, Yin Nuoxing sighed. I did not expect that they would send someone out so soon. Well, actually, I'm not sure whether it was them who sent that person out. However, there is a 60% chance that it was them. I think that person is just an ordinary deity, Lon Xin muttered. Yin Nuoxing looked at her and shook his head. He reached out and rubbed her hair. He said, "Little girl, you are a descendant of deities. However, you do not have that kind of aura. I thought that you would have that kind of feeling, but it seems that you do not." Lon Xin stuck out her tongue. Yin Nuoxing said, "Ordinary people do not have that kind of aura. That kind of aura with a weak high level of divinity is obviously brought about by the deities. That kind of aura comes from being close to a life form with a high level of divinity for a long time. The dark magic formula that the person practiced is probably not simple. When the aura is stable, one can feel the weak fluctuations in space. However, the person's own energy is very well hidden. But it could also be that he is from a big force that does not appear in the world." Lon Xin wrinkled her nose. "So, it is only a possibility." Yin Nuoxing smiled and nodded his head. "Then why did you point him in the wrong direction?" Little White looked at him, puzzled. Yin Nuoxing looked at him speechlessly. "In this case, it would be a problem if I pointed him in the right direction. I'm just a demigod. Just now, I did not cover my aura. If I really pointed him in the right direction and he found the right place, he would look at me differently in the future." Look of adoration. Yin Nuoxing's face twitched, and he knocked on Little White's head hard. Look of vigilance. When that guy looked at us just now, he kept using his divinity to sense our divinity. There is no such thing as seeing our divinity directly. Normally, he would use his soul power to sense our strength and the strength of our aura. Although I do not know if we will meet again in the future, it is not wrong to be cautious. However, who knows what he will think? If he did not find the right place, it is not impossible for him to vent his anger on me in the future. Ow! Lon Xin pulled Yin Nuoxing's sleeve. On the fire phoenix, she spread out the treasure map. He did not know when this girl took it out from his pendant. At this time, her jade finger was pointing at the location where they were. There was a map of the ultimate plane region beside them. After comparing it, it was exactly the location that she was pointing at on the treasure map. Brother Nuoxing, the burial ground of heaven is beside us, Lon Xin said softly. Mei Mao flashed. Oh! Yin Nuoxing took a look and found that it was indeed beside them. It was about half a day's journey in the northwest direction. Although it was a little off, it was not too far off. The burial ground of heaven was also a long distance away from the city of beastmen in the ultimate plane region. One was above, and the other was below. Well, let's go and take a look first. Little White, we don't have to go in and see what the situation is like, right? Yin Nuoxing looked at Whitey. The latter pondered for a while and shook its head. Just stand at the door and watch. Now that we are so close to them, if the stupid housekeeper and the others are really inside, I will be able to sense them easily. The connection between the four mythological beasts cannot be blocked by the strange rules of the Forbidden Zone. Yin Nuoxing looked at Little White thoughtfully, and then looked at the treasure map. He remembered that when he first went to look for Little White, he saw a white dot on the map of the Pantheon realm. At first, he thought that the dot was stained with something. But when he saw that the white dot could change and tremble slightly, he realized that it was a living person. Then, he went to look for Little White. After listening to him, Little White was silent for a while. Then, he said, because when I was traveling outside, there were no special rules or energy in that mountain range. It could not block my presence. Otherwise, why would the demonic beasts and monsters in that mountain range scatter like birds? It is because they sense my presence. There are many mountains in the ultimate plain region. Those special terrains have their own strange rules and strange terrains. It is not impossible for them to block the presence of the two girls. Yin Nuashing looked at Little White suspiciously. This guy was very unreliable. He wasted 10 divine grade formation scrolls and got nothing in the end. Little White had goosebumps all over when he saw Little White's suspicious look. He coughed and said calmly, "There will be no problem this time. Although I can't find them all at once, I can still find where they are." The resonance of the 4 mythological beasts can be triggered every once in a while. Although it is a one-sided feeling, as long as I can go to the entrance of the burial ground of heaven, it will be fine. Even if I can't sense whether they are inside or not, I can still use the resonance to roughly feel where they are. Yin Nuashing was still suspicious. He mumbled a few times, but didn't say anything. Whoosh! A purplish-red light streaked across the sky, leaving behind a large patch of sunlight ash. The ash condensed into fragments and fell from the sky like an auspicious omen. Many people rushed into the sky, wanting to chase after the fleeting light. However, the light was too fast. By the time they rushed into the sky, the light had already disappeared into the horizon. So many things have happened recently. I heard that there was an incredible anomaly in the dry plain region. Yesterday, something big happened in the extreme plain region. Now, I feel the aura of our monster king streaking across the sky. I really can't stand being disturbed. Are you hallucinating these 2 days? Did you not rest well? Yin Nuashing and the others streaked across the sky. They didn't have much time to rest in the extreme plain region. Although there were cities scattered around this region, they were smaller in scale and quality compared to the big cities. Although there were city walls, they looked rougher. Those were the cities built by the monster race. The only place where humans could stay was the city of beastmen in the center. There was a giant teleportation gate that connected to various places in the realm of the gods. The monster race's cities didn't welcome humans. Although they were disguised, they were too lazy to go down and rest. If they were seen through, it wouldn't be fun. The aura of the monster race is very unique to the monster race. Sigh, I can't help it. I can only say so. It's good that I didn't say it was a bunch of thatched huts. Yin Nuashing supported his forehead with his hand. It wasn't as he said. It was a bunch of thatched huts. However, compared to the cities built by humans, the monster race's cities were unsightly. The palaces of some forces were also crooked, especially the large buildings. Only a few small buildings could be seen. As the journey was short and fast, Yin Nuashing and the others didn't waste any time to rest. They flashed past the city, leaving behind shocked voices. Another group of people thought that a great fortune had fallen from the sky. So many things have happened recently. Strange phenomena that don't make sense, strange news that don't make sense, and the price of the market has increased for no reason. A mouthful of top-grade spiritual medicine actually costs a piece of demigod-level beast bone. Wasn't it possible to use a bowl of demigod-level beast blood to exchange for it yesterday? Did the boss not drink the blood and eat the bones instead? He said he was sick of drinking it. Yesterday, some people appeared in the city for no reason. Even the city lord was shocked. Look, he brought some people to God knows where early in the morning. I heard that the people who came were very powerful. Within a radius of 10,000 miles. Could they be from the Tian Luo Palace? I don't think so. A few days ago, some of the elites from the Tian Luo Palace returned and went to the city lord's residence. After yesterday's incident, they were dragged out early in the morning. They were ordered to do something. Hiss, which force are they from? Most of the other cities were in the same situation. Before the people were in chaos, a bunch of rumors had already spread. The mysterious young experts were all asking about the origin of the strange phenomena and the relatively well-known events in the realm of the gods in recent times. Originally, there wasn't much to say. They were considered to be well-known in the realm of the gods. However, they were asked to mention it again. Due to the strength of these people, they couldn't help but mention it. At this time, there were also some uninvited guests who were casually strolling around the market. After instructing the city lord's people, they were lazy. No one knew where this group of young heroes came from. They had never heard of them before, yet they possessed extremely great strength that didn't lose out to the first generation's 12 divine pillars. One of the latter had even been beaten until he was lying on the ground. Chapter 10:31. This was a dark place. Normally, almost no one would come here. Even if they glanced at it from afar, they would run away in fear. This was an ominous place. Gloomy winds were howling, and weak soul power was drifting around. It was as if there were vengeful spirits lingering here. A mysterious power formed a special energy field in this place. This sky was especially strange. Under the bright sun, there was a part of the world that was dark and gloomy. There was no sun, no moon, and no starry sky. It was just a dark sky that seemed to lead to a space of nothingness. The burial ground of heaven, also known as the burial ground of heaven. Yin Nuashing and the others came here. They looked at the dark sky and land from a distance of 10,000 feet. The dead trees were rotting and the ground was cracked. An ominous aura mixed with dark purple and black came out from the cracks in the ground. It distorted the entire space and the rules of heaven and earth. Anyone who looked at it would feel uneasy. This dark place occupied an area of 100,000 miles. It was pitch black, and there were magnificent mountains and deep valleys inside. However, all of this was shrouded under the black curtain. There was no such place in the primordial age. Yin Nuashing ran her fingers through her long hair. She flicked her hair gently. Her colorful eyes were deep, and there was a sea blue and golden light in them. There is no aura of life in this place. It seems like the space is dead. Little White was scared. She mumbled and quickly hid behind Yin Nuashing. Then, she closed her eyes and slowly spread out the senses of the four gods. After a while, Yin Nuashing finished her observation. Lonixin blinked, and Mei Mao went up to her. "How is it?" Yin Nuashing closed her eyes for a long time. Then, she let out a long breath and said in surprise, "I have to pray that we don't have to go in later. If we go in, we will definitely die." Mei Mao and Lon Xian trembled. "Is this place so scary?" Lon Xian asked nervously, "What is in there?" Yin Nuashing shook his head. "It's nothing. It's just some dregs. Some dregs that have been broken into dregs are scattered evenly in this dark world, forming a land of death. No life can survive here. Even if a living creature steps in, it will be disintegrated by the twisted rules here in a few seconds." As he spoke, he picked up a huge rock that was a few meters wide and threw it into the dark land. The huge rock had just passed through the area, but before it could land on the ground, its huge body quietly dissipated like air. Before it landed on the ground, it had already disappeared, and not even a particle was left behind. Lon Xian's pretty face turned pale. She could see a little bit of it. It was an absolute disappearance. The stone had completely disappeared. Not even a little bit of it was left. Yin Nuashing narrowed his eyes and muttered, "There are remnants of the power of a world and the power of a heavenly god. According to my speculations, a heavenly god should have died here. When he died, a world crashed into this land, and several types of power mixed together to create the problem with the laws of this place. This is not a flaw in the rules of heaven and earth. The pillar of creation will not care about it. There are many places like this in the realm of the gods, but they do not affect the rules of heaven and earth. The pillar of creation is too lazy to care about them." Yin Nuashing said softly. There were many strange places that appeared in the celestial world. Some are naturally formed, while others were man-made due to various reasons. Originally, it might have been the remains of a battlefield or the place where experts fell. However, as time passed, everyone forgot how that place was formed. Naturally, it became a forbidden area. Even if there were people who still remembered what happened here, it could not change the fact that it was a forbidden area. At this time, Little White suddenly shuddered. She raised her head and looked at Yin Nuashing. After hesitating for a long time, she laughed dryly and said, "Well, maybe it will be better to go in." Yin Nuashing was stunned. She reached out and picked her ear. Then, she put her ear next to her ear and listened carefully. "What? Say that again. I didn't hear you clearly." Little White laughed bitterly. She gritted her teeth and squeezed out a few words from between her teeth. "Some of the fluctuations of the four God senses are coming from inside. The rest are scattered in the air." Yin Nuashing took a deep breath. She narrowed her eyes and licked her lips. "Hexen, do you think the white tiger meat is delicious?" Lon Exiner laughed dryly. Little White was furious. Was this guy addicted to eating meat in the realm of ultimate plane? "I think this white tiger is suffering from heat stroke. Why don't?" Yin Nuashing laughed eerily. "Sigh, who likes to go to such a dangerous place? I feel like my neck is being strangled by something." Little White waved her hand and sighed. She knew that he was joking. Yin Nuashing narrowed her eyes to make sure that Little White was not joking. Then, she sighed and scratched her head. "Can't you give me a simple question? I just said that if I walk in here, I will die 10 times out of 10. You want me to walk around inside? Do you know how to write 10 times out of 10 in the language of the gods? If you don't know, I can teach you. Why don't we walk around and see? It is quite dangerous to walk indirectly," Lon Exner said softly. Hearing this, Yin Nuashing nodded. Seeing Little White staring at the sky burial ground in a daze, she felt a little scared. She did not want to walk in, did she? "Is your four gods' resonance reliable?" Basically, it is not canceled out by external factors, unless Azure Dragon and the others want to hide. But even then, I can only sense where they are. Back then, I was the one who found the game of hide and seek. I followed the fluctuation all the way back to the realm of the gods. Little White spread her hands helplessly. But in this era, the realm of the gods has a strange barrier. If we are outside the realm of the gods, we will not be able to sense each other. Yin Nuashing pondered for a while, but he couldn't come up with a good idea. So, he followed Lon Exner's instructions and circled around the burial ground of heaven. After waiting for an hour, Xiaobai used the four gods' resonance again. This time, the intensity was quite impressive. Yin Nuashing could feel it. In his spiritual world, Feng who had turned into an egg, gently trembled. Brother Nuashing, the Lon Exner pulled his sleeve and pointed forward with her eyes. Yin Nuashing looked over and saw a person at the edge of the sky burial ground. That person was looking into the sky burial ground. His eyes were empty, as if he was recalling something. Yin Nuashing did not know what he was thinking. A divine god. Yin Nuashing raised her eyebrows. It was not a big deal to look at a divine god. The problem was that this divine god was too young. Yin Nuashing could see through his life aura. His lifespan should not be more than 100,000 years. This was the dividing line. A divine god below 100,000 years old was considered very young, while a divine god above 100,000 years old was considered middle-aged. However, this was a very vague evaluation standard. After all, everyone was different. When that person saw someone standing in the distance, he frowned slightly. However, he did not say anything. He looked at them from afar and then turned around and walked away. He looked back 3 times with each step as if he was thinking about something in the sky burial ground. Yin Nuashing looked at him and did not say anything. He left with Little White and Lon Exiner. After they were some distance away, Little White opened his eyes and said, "Stupid housekeeper. Their auras come from 2 directions. Let me guess. One is in the west, and the other is in the sky burial ground?" Yin Nuashing said. Little White coughed and nodded helplessly. Then, he pulled his hair again. He did not understand why there was such a result. Could it be that they were hiding in 2 different places? One on each side? Oh, this idea was a little disgusting. The auras of the Azure Dragon and the Slow One are together. But now, they are in 2 different places. One is in the sky burial ground, and the other is somewhere in the west of the ultimate plane region. Their auras are in 2 different places, and their strengths are exactly the same. Little White pulled his hair in distress. Yin Nuashin glanced at him and said, "They can't be hiding in two different places." Little White was speechless. He had thought so just now. After all, he did not understand what had happened. "So, do we still want to go to the sky burial ground?" Lon Xin looked at the two of them. She hugged Little Magic and squeezed him like a ball. Little Magic seemed to make a strange sound. Yin Nuashing and Little White looked at each other. 7 or 8 kinds of light flashed in their eyes. A pile of information was flying back and forth. Their eyes were like lightning. After a while, Lon Xin puffed up her cheeks and stretched out her jade finger to poke Yin Nuashing's cheek. The latter slowly came back to his senses and looked in the direction of the sky burial ground. He was silent for a while. Then his left hand unconsciously snapped his fingers and said, "If you want to go, it's not that we can't go in. Can we go in?" "But didn't you just say?" Little White looked at him suspiciously. Yin Nuashing glanced at him with disgust and said, "How can this god be blocked by a mere forbidden area? Isn't it just a fallen god in a destroyed world?" He muttered and took out a black scroll from his pendant. It was really black. It was as black as a black hole. There was no pattern or luster on it. "Damn, this can't be." Little White sucked in a breath of cold air. He had to use something of this level so soon. Yin Nuashing glared at him and said flatly, "There's nothing I can do about it. With the power of my soul, even if my godly soul has been awakened and I have the essence of a godly soul, I still haven't recovered my quantity. I can cast divine-grade formations, but the quality is slightly lower. However, I can't cast divine-grade formations at all. It's not appropriate to go in there with a God Park weapon. There will always be gaps in the weapon's defense. But a divine-grade array at the divine-grade array. I feel distressed." Little White's face was slightly distorted. "Even if you're rich, you shouldn't use it like this." "It's fine. This array scroll is made from 120,000 materials. The array carved on it can be used indefinitely. However, every time it's used, it will have to replenish its energy. As for how many times it can be used, it depends on the amount of energy used. If it's the maximum energy output, it should be put away after using it 3 times. Yin Nuashing tossed the black scroll in her hand and sighed. "There are more than 60 of these array scrolls. They're all divine great array at the divine great array. I carved them when I was standing at the peak of the divine great array. I'm too lazy to use such precious array scrolls to inscribe ordinary arrays." "Then what kind of array is this array scroll in your hand?" Little White asked curiously. Yin Nuashing blinked and opened it to take a look. He said, "It's a defensive magic circle, the formation of nothingness." The nothingness here doesn't refer to the void. It's the true meaning of nothingness. When a magic circle is activated, except for the things limited by the magic circle, everything that comes into contact with the energy field formed by the magic circle will be assimilated into nothingness. To put it simply, it will be reduced to a state of nothing left. Little White's face twitched. "Are you sure this isn't an offensive array?" "No, it's really for defensive purposes." Yin Nuashing shook her head and said, "However, you know that the direction of my cultivation was a little extreme. To me, there's no such thing as a defensive array. Wherever the sword points, everything will be crushed. Therefore, this array that I weaved is called a defensive array. In fact, it's also an extremely powerful attack." Lon Xin sighed and added. Yin Nuashing laughed dryly and nodded. That was right. Just by listening to the introduction, she knew that this thing wasn't purely for defensive purposes. It could also be used to kill people without paying for it. It won't cause a huge commotion if it's used, right? Little White was a little worried. At this moment, many old monsters in the realm of the gods had awakened. If they noticed, no, the activation of the array of nothingness is equivalent to no commotion. Furthermore, all detection methods are useless because there's no energy that can feedback any information. The moment they come into contact with the energy field, they'll disappear into nothingness. Yin Nuashing shook her head. Yin Nuashing waved her hand and unfolded the array scroll. There was nothing in the pure black scroll, but suddenly black rays of light shot out from it. Thousands of rays of light flooded the area 10 feet under their feet, and gradually formed an extremely mysterious and complicated array. Every inch of pattern and every inch of thread carried an extremely difficult message. There was also a circle of small words in the array, which were also difficult to understand. They didn't look like pure words, but just looked like them. Go. A strange sound was heard, and the array quietly formed. A black semicircular energy barrier appeared and enveloped the three of them. Even the ground under their feet became black. The range of the barrier could be said to be impenetrable. Yin Nuoxing and the others could see through the pure black barrier. There was only a slight visual impact. However, when they looked in from the outside, they could only see a black hemisphere. It was so dark that it seemed to be able to swallow their minds. They couldn't see anything. He clapped his hands and sighed. Then let's go in. After he finished speaking, he saw Little White and Lon staring blankly at the black array beneath their feet. He was stunned and puzzled. What's wrong? Do you feel something is wrong? Don't worry. Nothing will happen in the array. It can even destroy the attack of a divine god. Lon Xian shook her head. Mei Mao flashed and sparkled. No, this is a divine god's array, a complete divine god's array. In this world, it's already not bad if 1,000th of a divine god's array is left. Now that I see a complete divine god's array, I'm a little excited. Little White scratched her head. Although the 4 celestial phenomenon gods had the same status as divine gods, they only had fragments of memories left in their blood. They didn't have memories of when they became divine gods, so they were a little emotional. When Yin Nuoxing heard this, she couldn't help but laugh. She sighed and said, "This is nothing. I know quite a lot of arrays, and there are quite a number of divine gods arrays. Many of them were made by me. If you want, you can look through them yourselves. Anyway, my spiritual world has been messed up by you, Lon Xian," and Little White laughed dryly. In the beginning, Yi was the one who messed up that place. They were just accomplices. Well, at most, they were just accomplices. Waving her hand, Yin Nuoxing didn't say much. Her figure flashed, and she flew toward the sky burial ground. There was only a dead land formed by the twisted rules. It was an absolute dead land without a trace of life. As for the void array, it was a complete void. Both of them were extremes. The former didn't have any life, and the latter didn't have anything. When they met, no one knew what would happen. In the sky burial ground, it was desolate and withered. There was no life in it. It gave people a strong sense of oppression, as if they were carrying a mountain on their backs. When they walked in, their hair stood on end. Little White was even more frightened. Its blue and white fur stood on end, and its eyes were wide open. Lon Xian shivered. She quickly moved closer to Yin Nuoxing to give her a sense of security. After comforting the frightened girl, Yin Nuoxing cast his gaze towards the ground. This withered and dead black ground intersected with the pure black domain of nothingness. No strange sounds came out, but his eyes saw some reactions. The reaction of energy coming into contact with each other and then being annihilated. Brother Nuoxing, are you okay? Lon Xian was about to go into his arms. She was very uneasy. Yin Nuoxing rubbed the girl's long hair. He pondered for a while and said, "The God power and the power of the world here are entangled. It's at the same level as my array. It's not that the Divine Realm Master was at the same level as me when he was alive. It's just that the Void Array is not at the level of a Divine Realm Master. It can't completely turn the unknown energies into nothingness. It's a little entangled, but it's not a big problem. It won't affect us." When Lon Xian heard this, she was relieved. She blinked at Mei Mao and said, "Is the power of the world a kind of origin energy?" Yin Nuoxing frowned and said, "It counts, but it doesn't. Let's just treat it as a type of origin energy. It counts because it is indeed a mysterious power that was born from the heavens and earth. It is one of the origin energy. It exists in every corner of the world, but no one can touch it. Only those who are at the level of gods can touch this power. But it doesn't count for another reason. It is fundamentally different from the other origin energy, the power of time, the power of space, the power of the elements, and it is unstable. The other origin energies would occasionally go on a rampage. but there would always be a portion of them that are relatively stable. Only those origin energies would be able to create products that correspond to themselves. The power of time gave birth to time. The power of space gave birth to space, and the power of space gave birth to each other. But the power of a world, which exists in every corner of the world, came into existence before the power of a world was born. Logically speaking, there would be no such thing as the power of a world, because it does not seem to play any special role in the composition of the world. However, it does exist, and we can touch it. As far as we know, its existence came after the birth of the world, and that is the biggest difference between it and the other origin energies. Secondly, it is unstable, and there is no such thing as the power of a world in a state of tranquility. More specific details you will know when you become gods, but let's not talk about that now. Now, let's talk about it later. Yin Nuashing was addicted to talking. At this moment, she suddenly realized that this was not a good place to talk. They were in a strange, forbidden area. Lan Xnr and Little White finally reacted and looked around nervously. Chapter 1032. Woo Woo. The black whirlwind produced a bone-chilling, mournful sound, like the cries of vengeful spirits. The black, bowl-shaped, inverted barrier fell onto the black ground, but the pitch-black surface of the barrier would occasionally produce some white ripples. Something touched the surface of the barrier, producing a strange sound that was difficult to catch. I really don't feel safe at all. Little White rode on Yin Nuashing's shoulder. His blue and white fur stood on end. He stared at the barrier with his eyes wide open. His entire body was filled with an inexplicable aura that made him feel uneasy. His heart was beating several times faster. That's not a reason for you to ride on my neck. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes. Little Purple Soul was only 4 or 5 years old. However, this guy was about 11 or 12 years old. How could he ride on his neck? As he spoke, he glanced at Lan Xnr, who was hanging on half of his body. He couldn't help but sigh. He was about to become a moving fortress. He couldn't help but mutter, "You were the one who said that you wanted to come in. Now you're so scared." "There's no contradiction," Little White said confidently. Boom! Under the cracked ground, a black arc of energy shot up into the sky. It was like a fire dragon. It zigzagged towards the sky and drew a semicircle in the sky. Then, it fell back into the cracked ground. Yin Nuashing muttered to himself for a while. The chaotic rules here have condensed and formed. They can even be seen. The rules here have been distorted to a shocking extent. I can feel that there are many vengeful spirits. Negative emotions are entangled and lingering here. Lan Xnr said softly. Yin Nuashing nodded. It's not surprising. A world has fallen here. An entire world has exploded here. The concentrated power of the world is everywhere. No matter if it was a small world or an origin world, it has evolved to a relatively large scale. The people in that world, Little White frowned slightly. What else could it be? I don't need to tell you. You should know it by looking at the negative emotions that are lingering in this place. Yin Nuashing pointed at the black land. Anyone who walked in here would be able to sense the overflowing resentment. Lan Xnr and Little White sighed. Were they all dead? Those who could not jump out of the world could only perish together with the world. Yin Nuashing said seriously, that was definitely not a normal destruction of a world. A normal world's ball of light disintegrates silently, and no one can sense the beginning and spread of the destruction. Unknowingly, everything disappears. However, such a dense amount of resentment was left behind here, entangled with the power of the world. There were definitely signs of the destruction of that world. Countless lives in that world sensed it, and they might even have witnessed the destruction. Otherwise, such a massive amount of resentment wouldn't have gathered here. The few of them walked for more than 10 miles, and the atmosphere became increasingly heavy. Little White tried to use the resonance of the 4 gods, but it didn't sense any response. Don't use the resonance of the 4 gods after we enter. Yin Nuashing nodded. This was expected. The rules of this place were distorted. If the normal rules of heaven and earth were to be a rope, then this rope would have been twisted into a fried dough twist. It even had to be entangled with itself. There was a knot here and a ring there. In short, it was a messy situation, and it also made this place extremely dangerous. The cracked ground stretched as far as the eye could see. The sky was dark and gloomy. There was no sunlight, but they could clearly see the surroundings. The black mountains in the distance were deep and heavy, and they brought about a huge sense of oppression. There was a withered tree by the side of the road. 2 meters above the tree trunk, it was twisted into a whirlpool and extended outwards. There was no sign of life. There was no life in this place. It was impossible for life to exist in the known and unknown. This was the rule of this place. Even someone as strong as a divine god could only cover himself with an energy field and create an independent world, just like Yin Nuashing at this moment. Although he was not a divine god, if a divine god wanted to enter this place, he could only do so. This was a place where countless lives and at least one divine god had fallen. It was a place of despair that buried an entire world. This place did not disintegrate because it existed in the realm of the gods. If this place fell in another world, the power here would spread rapidly and form a destructive whirlpool, destroying everything. Yin Nuashing waved his hand lightly, and a stream of air swept out and pounced on the twisted, withered tree. Upon contact, the tree was blown into a black stream of air, and it scattered like dust. Then it slowly settled on the ground. "Is this fake?" Lan Xian asked in surprise. Everything here was beyond her understanding of the normal world. "Yes, it's just a manifestation of the strange power here." Yin Nuashing nodded. "It's not strange for anything to happen here. If I hadn't used a rule formation to stabilize this place, we would have also been assimilated by the strange rules here. We can't fly here." Xiaobai frowned and said bitterly with his elbow on Yin Nuashing's head and his cheek on his hand. "The suppression of the rules. Don't touch my head, it hurts." Yin Nuashing mumbled as he brushed Little White's arm away. He said, "The residual power here is too strong, and it will never dissipate. The great samsara can erase it, but because the realm of the gods is so special, it's within the realm of the gods, and the great samsara can't affect it." Lan Xian, and Mei Mao flashed and suddenly cried out in surprise. They hurriedly pointed forward. "Brother Nuashing, over there, over there." Yin Nuashing turned his head and looked. He was also stunned. Under a black tree formed by the strange power, there was a white skeleton leaning against the bottom of the tree. "There's still a pile of bones in this place. I'm afraid it's the remains of a heavenly god." Yin Nuashing had a strange expression on his face. He muttered to himself for a while, and his eyes flashed as he carefully examined the white skeleton under the tree not far away. After a while, he narrowed his eyes. "It's actually an ordinary skeleton." Yin Nuashing was suspicious. He lifted his feet and walked over. Puff, puff. Just as he was a few meters away, the strange tree suddenly emitted waves of black fog. The fog drifted down from the sky, and a few huge black pillars of energy shot out from the cracked ground. The ominous energy they emitted made people feel a chill run down their spines. Interesting, a stable and concrete rule has appeared in this chaotic and formless land of rules. This world is actually protecting that place on its own. A strange smile appeared on Yin Nuashing's face. "How curious." Lan Xian saw him moving his fingers, and her face was covered in cold sweat. Before she could pull him away, Yin Nuashing had already walked in that direction. Lan Xian gritted her teeth and had no choice but to follow along with Little White. Boom, boom. The sound of the sky collapsing and the earth cracking could be heard. The space trembled and the mountains collapsed. A huge abyss appeared on the ground far away. The black whirlwind was like a huge, ferocious beast. Because of their approach, it became more and more hurried. It stared at these uninvited guests with bloodshot eyes as they gradually approached the place it was protecting. They had just taken 2 steps when such a strange thing happened. It was as if they had touched the weak spot of this black land of death. This place was very important to it. The violent wind messed up Little White's long hair. Her heart was beating like a drum. Why is this place so strange? Yin Nuashing frowned. He lifted his foot and stomped lightly on the ground. An extremely complicated rune spread out from under his foot. In an instant, it spread to the end of the Black Land. Woo-woo! A strange roar could be heard from afar. A huge black shadow exploded and dissipated into black particles. The particles that were floating in the air seemed to interweave into a skeleton pattern. It also seemed like an illusion. Isn't there nothing in this godforsaken place? Little White's fur hadn't loosened since the beginning. At this moment, the crescent mark between his eyebrows lit up in fright. A silvery white light spread out from his body. There's nothing. Oh, there's nothing alive. That thing isn't alive. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes. You're one of the 4 celestial phenomenon gods. Can you calm down a little? Calm down. I'm scared of ghosts. Little White's eyes widened. His face was pale. He couldn't help but say, Yin Nuashing and Lan Shiner, is this guy really one of the 4 celestial phenomenon gods? Yin Nuashing sighed helplessly. He shook his head and narrowed his eyes. An inexplicable aura slowly spread out from his body. He slowly raised his open hands. Energy condensed. A weak godly power was also gradually condensing. Woo-woo. However, just as Yin Nuashing was condensing energy and was about to unleash a massacre, the strange black whirlwind suddenly let out a low wail. Then it gradually dissipated. It seemed that it also knew that it couldn't provoke this tough bone. At least you know what's good for you. Yin Nuashing sighed exasperatedly. The condensed energy quietly dissipated. Although he didn't know what kind of strange mutation had occurred in this strange place due to the distortion of the laws, there seemed to be something with a weak consciousness here. It was just an object. It couldn't even be considered a living thing. It might not even have a physical body. In any case, that thing was probably afraid of him. After that mournful wail, everything calmed down. The exploding energy pillar and the violent wind were all gone. Even the swaying tree had stopped swaying. What exactly is that thing? Little White was scared. Could it be that there's some strange and unimaginable existence hiding in this place? Is it another dying god? Or a celestial phenomenon god? Or at that level? Yin Nuashing shook his head. Neither. It's just a strange consciousness that was born from the distortion of the laws of heaven and earth. Maybe it's the consciousness of this dark place itself. In the end, this burial ground of heaven buried a god from a world. However, there are no records of which god it was. I don't even know when this place was formed. As Yin Nuashing spoke, he walked toward the big tree. He walked in front of the skeleton and glanced at it. However, he shook his head. It's already turned into ashes. It will dissipate with a touch. If it weren't for the existence of the strange laws of this strange place, this skeleton might not even have ashes left. However, in this place which God had fallen, who did this skeleton belong to? It definitely had an inseparable connection with this place. Perhaps this fallen world was created by it. Yin Nuashing muttered to himself. He glanced around the skeleton, but he couldn't find anything. This dark place had reluctantly allowed them to come here. It didn't seem like it wanted to say anything. Helpless, he could only explore by himself. With a wave of his hand, he took out the Book of Epics. Yin Nuashing glanced and sighed through it. His gaze gradually became deep. This place was covered by the remnant chi of a god and the power of an entire world. Even if it was covered up randomly, it couldn't hide the secrets of heaven. It also created a certain amount of resistance for him. The Book of Epics could trace back to things that happened dozens of epochs ago. However, it was easily disturbed. Even a slight disturbance could shorten the process by several times, just like now. 3,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago, 200,000, 2 trillion, Yin Nuashing murmured. Scenes and time flashed past in his eyes. In the end, it stopped at a string of numbers. It was close to an epoch. It pointed to the middle of the 138 epochs. It was half an epoch away from the current epoch. At this moment, it had already reached the end. The person who appeared in the scene was obviously a middle-aged man. However, he couldn't trace back any further. Yin Nuashing looked at it for a while and frowned. He captured some information. Ji Luanhui, Reincarnation Emperor? The Reincarnation Emperor from the last epoch. Whitey was also stunned. Although he had only awakened in recent years, he wasn't completely dead 3 epochs ago. He still had a weak consciousness that alternated between sleeping and waking up. At that time, his origin had returned to the world of the gods. He could occasionally hear some voices from the world of the gods. This was one of the talents of the 4 gods of celestial phenomenon. Even now, he could still do it by merging his origin into the world of the gods. Although he didn't know much, he had heard of this name before. He was an emperor god expert who existed in the last epoch. In this era where the gods didn't appear and emperors took precedence, he was the representative of the strongest. With his body and his strength, he shook the world's oldest long march, reincarnation. History is repeating itself in a myriad of worlds. Reincarnation after reincarnation has cut off the path forward. With my body, I will tear apart this destined scene and return this world to the right track. Yin Nuashing murmured softly. He had seen this sentence before. The reincarnation emperor's thoughts were terrifying. He was bold and daring to think of such things. In their eyes, this person was no different from a madman. Reincarnation was an inevitable process that couldn't be shaken. Reincarnation was an unshakable process in this world. Heaven and earth were in the cycle of reincarnation. Things would never be the same again. This world was always moving forward. Maybe it couldn't see through this, which was why it had such thoughts. Delusional thinking of using the body of a god emperor to cut off the path of reincarnation? What a fantasy! Yin Nuashing didn't care much about this. There had been so many geniuses since ancient times. To put it bluntly, those people were just a fine line away from being a madman. He was a complete madman. No matter which aspect he leaned towards, he was full of negative attributes. It wasn't that he couldn't understand the reincarnation emperor's thoughts, blocking the path of reincarnation, freeing this world from its eternal shackles and returning it to the right track. Only then could it continue to move forward and allow this world to continue moving forward. Was he treating the suppression of the rules of heaven and earth as an inevitable experience in reincarnation? In the course of heaven and earth, the power of rules was like a wheel. There would be times when it was strong and times when it was weak. At that time, it would usher in a grand era, and there would also be times when it was weak. Many people called the complete rotation of these 2 states a lifetime. Some people understood this as the reincarnation of heaven and earth, where one lifetime after another passed by and repeated endlessly. Some people believed that this world was in the process of reincarnation, going back and forth endlessly. However, in Yin Nuashing's opinion, these were all nonsense. The changes in the power of the rules of heaven and earth couldn't be more normal. Such things also happened in the primordial age. When a grand era descended, there were as many gods as there was sand in the sea. Everywhere in the 8 elements realm, there were many gods at the heavenly god realm. They were extremely powerful and then began to weaken. The original number of gods and heavenly gods didn't change. The number of newly promoted gods and heavenly gods decreased, but there were still many newly promoted gods. After all, the number of lives in the primordial realm was too large. This kind of change in the rules of heaven and earth that affected the entire primordial realm was like a person. He would eventually become tired after an excessive outburst and enter a state of fatigue. After he recovered his strength, he would recover again. However, this era was a little more special. If the primordial realm was compared to a person, it was already very tired at this time. It needed to rest for a while, but there were still very important things to do. Therefore, it held its breath and went on a rampage to resolve the matter. After that, it would take a long time to rest and reorganize. That's right, this was how he viewed this world. It wasn't impossible to say that it was the final radiance of the setting sun. This world had always been in the cycle of reincarnation. The old and the new were replaced, generation after generation, and the exchange of generations. This world was in the cycle of reincarnation, but it didn't stop moving forward. As long as time continued to move forward, this world would never stop. The philosophy of the reincarnation great was wrong, jumping out of the world and seeing through the truth of this world. If the reincarnation great could advance to the later God level, he would definitely be able to go very far. He was already very close to this realm, but due to the severe oppression of the rules of heaven and earth, he fell halfway. Yin Nuoxing sighed softly, feeling a little regretful. Suddenly, some thoughts flashed through his mind. He narrowed his eyes slightly. The reincarnation great, reincarnation, was there any connection between it and the heavenly God reincarnation that appeared in the Battle of the Dark Age? Or is it just the same name? Since ancient times, there were many people who studied reincarnation. There seemed to be quite a lot of people who borrowed this name. It also cultivated the 6 paths of reincarnation technique. Yin Nuoxing narrowed his eyes slightly. The Book of Epics had seen through a large part of this person's life. Xianyin had left him the 6 paths of reincarnation technique, but he didn't know the origin of this reincarnation technique and who created it. The reincarnation great emperor and the ancient city of the Dark Age. There is also a part of the 6 paths of reincarnation technique. It feels weird. I keep feeling that something is trying to connect, but I can't find a point of connection. Yin Nuoxing scratched his head. His mind was in a mess. He felt that he was about to figure out something, but he couldn't. Whenever he thought too much, he would feel irritated. Whenever he was irritated, he would scratch his hair with all his might and make anxious sounds. Lon Xner and Little White looked at each other and shrugged helplessly. Who knew what was on his mind that made him so anxious? Forget it. Let's not think about it anymore. After a while, he let out a long sigh. He tidied his long hair and said, "Now is not the time to think about this. Let's find a reason why we came here." Chapter 1033. You're leaving just like that? You don't care about that great emperor anymore? Seeing Yin Nuoxing turn around and walk past him, Little White shook a little and quickly grabbed his hair. He even turned around to look at the skeleton leaning against the black tree and frowned slightly. "Don't care. Why should I care about it?" Yin Nuoxing looked at him strangely and said, "It's still going on its way. This place could be left behind by it, whether it did it intentionally or not. If that's the case, what happens next? I don't want to talk about it now. After all, I'm no longer the unscrupulous me that I used to be. I don't have the right to be unscrupulous. I'm just playing a little trick and stepping into places that shouldn't be explored. This is the burial place of the reincarnation emperor who caused a sensation in the realm of the gods in the last era. A world is buried here, and a god is buried here. Just let it continue to be quiet." Yin Nuoxing waved his hand. Lon Xin's expression changed. It's still going on, and it hasn't stopped. The reincarnation emperor, reincarnation. Could it be that it has always been here? Looking at his determined and thoughtful face, she couldn't help but frown slightly. She shook her head and didn't ask anything. In this world, there were many things that couldn't be known easily. Even someone as powerful as him had been hunted down for an entire era because he had touched something unknown. He had fallen into the reincarnation cycle for nearly 70 years before he had returned to this place with great difficulty. Everything had started anew. Yin Nuoxing sensed her gaze and tilted his head to look at her. He asked, "What's wrong?" Lon Xen shook her head and obediently followed beside him. She didn't say anything. He mumbled suspiciously and made an incomprehensible sound. Then he looked up at Little White and asked, "So, where is the aura? In the end, is it really in here? Ow, how dare you doubt me?" Little White angrily pulled his long hair and looked unhappy. "Isn't it because you're too unreliable?" Yin Nuoxing grimaced in pain and waved his hand to pat him. Only then did that stupid tiger stop. After a moment, he muttered and said, "It's in this direction." There's a reaction from the resonance of the 4 gods again. It took him a moment to realize that the 4 gods' resonance that had just lost its effect had suddenly reacted again. Yin Nuoxing sighed. Was this guy reliable or not? Was he reliable or not? The black whirlwind in the strange place had already stopped. He didn't know if it was because of Yin Nuoxing's aura or something else, but he was very interested in the consciousness that had appeared inexplicably in this place. If possible, he really wanted to meet this consciousness and see what it was. Was it a human, a ghost, or some other inexplicable life form? After walking for several thousand feet, a dark yellow stone suddenly appeared. It protruded from the ground 70 to 80 feet high, like a huge stone tablet. It was irregular, and from the side, it looked quite thin, only 3 to 4 meters wide. A cold aura with frost floated to the ground, landing in the cracks of the earth, turning into strands of black aura that drilled into the depths of the earth. Oh, what kind of broken stone is this? It's standing in the middle of the road and blocking the way. Little White glanced at the stone tablet out of boredom. The surface of the stone tablet was smooth, and there was nothing engraved on it. It was a smooth, pale, yellow stone tablet. Yin Nuoxing blinked, and his expression became strange. Why did this stone tablet appear here? What's wrong with this stone tablet? Little White asked. Yin Nuoxing scratched his head. This stone tablet, there's nothing special about it. In my opinion, there's nothing special about it. It's not much different from those strange stones that are used for ornamental purposes by the roadside. As he spoke, he raised his eyebrows and said with a raised voice, it's not very good to say that. After all, it's something from that place. If it appears here, it will more or less make people feel. Well, for the people in this world, it's very strange to see this thing. Could it be that it was brought back? What exactly is it? Little White scratched his cheek in confusion. Pointing at the pale yellow stone tablet that was 70 to 80 feet high, Yin Nuoxing said indifferently, "This stone is a stone erected on the reincarnation road. Wanexener and Little White. It's probably in the middle of the road. It's erected there for ornamental purposes. There's nothing special about it." Yin Nuoxing knocked on his head and suddenly thought of something. Speaking of which, I remember that when I was walking on the reincarnation road, I felt that something was wrong. It was different from the reincarnation road in my impression. Could it be because of the lack of this stone? As he often walked on the same road, it was easy to feel the changes on the familiar road, even if he wasn't very clear about the special changes. Moreover, this stone was very conspicuous. When Lan Exent twirled her hair and looked at him with a strange expression. This topic was also very strange. Well, I can't remember when. On the reincarnation road, all living creatures are in a confused state. They don't remember clearly what happened before they were alive. They just follow the rules of the road and walk forward in a daze. A strong divine soul, especially one like me, is strong enough to maintain a weak consciousness and can remember what happened on the reincarnation road. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to bring out the 9th Netherworld song. However, also couldn't stop myself from walking on the reincarnation road, Yin Nuoxing said. Then you jumped off at the end of the reincarnation road. Little White asked. Hey, that's a very difficult job. Yin Nuoxing nodded with a smile. However, there were only a few times when she jumped off at the end of the reincarnation road. In recent lives, she had escaped from the reincarnation road by jumping off. Also, when Quarter Moon appeared, she had also escaped from the reincarnation road. In the dozens of eras between these two sections, she had gone through the reincarnation road according to the rules, because there was no need to escape. Then what do you plan to do with this stone? Little White pointed at the stone tablet in front of them and asked. Yin Nuoxing didn't know either. He tilted his head and thought for a while. Let's just leave it here. Didn't I say that this stone is just a viewing stone on the reincarnation road? It has no effect on the reincarnation road itself. For others, because of its aura, they will feel that it is very strange and can even see many strange things through the stone. But for me, this is just a stone with a foreign aura. There's nothing special about it. We won't see strange things because that aura is blocked by the formation of nothingness, so it won't be affected. After bypassing the stone tablet, Lan Exener looked back and was stunned. She quickly tugged at Yin Nuoxing's arm and pointed to the bottom of the stone tablet. Yin Nuoxing looked back and was also stunned. There was another skeleton under the stone tablet. Well, to be specific, it was a golden skeleton. Obviously, it was the skeleton of a deity, and it should have been washed by the torrent of time for countless years. The bones of deities were said to never rot, but there was a limit. If there was no specific preservation method, the bones would gradually disappear and the flesh and blood would disappear together with the bones. In the end, only an empty golden skeleton would be left. This deity must have been buried here for quite a long time, maybe 5 eras. That was the standard time for a deity's body to rot, and the specific time might be even longer than that. Yin Nuashing tried to use the Book of Epics to go back in time, but he shook his head as soon as he tried. It doesn't work. The remaining rules and karma in its body have not completely disappeared. Perhaps it's because of this world. No matter how powerful a deity is, when his body is washed away by time, the karma and rules will disappear together with his body, leaving behind a useless golden skeleton. After that, he thought for a while and said, "But someone with a mind can use the skeleton as a weapon at the level of an eternal magic weapon or even a godhead weapon." Lon Xian, and Little White were speechless. They ignored his last sentence and said, "So, what's left in its body, on its bones, could be preserved by this world?" Yin Nuashing nodded. Little White was puzzled. She stared suspiciously at the black tree in the distance and muttered, "The things in this place seem to be related to reincarnation." The Reincarnation Emperor, a stone tablet on the Reincarnation Road. Don't tell me we'll walk directly into the Reincarnation Road. Yin Nuashing's face twitched. It's not completely impossible. However, the Reincarnation Road is not a place you can enter just because you want to. It only appears in the absolute rules of death, which means you can only see it after death. But for us, death is just a state, and it doesn't take much effort to reverse it. So, if you want to enter the Reincarnation Road alive, you need to wrap yourself tightly with the absolute rules of death, or even make yourself into a deceptive state of death. Only then can you walk into the Reincarnation Road. Can Brother Nuashing bring the dead back to life? Lon Xian, and Mei Mao's eyes flickered. Yin Nuashing muttered to himself. He didn't nod or shake his head. There are many restrictions, but you can think that there is such a power. At this moment, it's a little troublesome for me to use it. As I said, life and death are just a state for us. With enough time and conditions, we can change it. There are many conditions to open the Reincarnation Road in the state of life. On the contrary, there are no obstacles when you enter the Reincarnation Road after death. Reincarnation is the journey of all living beings. One generation is born and another dies. Reincarnation alternates. Everything will never stop, Yin Nuashing murmured softly. After a while, he let out a long sigh. There was some sadness on his face, but it only appeared for a moment and disappeared. He waved his hand and was about to turn around and continue walking forward. But he stopped, and his expression changed slightly. That's not right. How could there be a god skeleton in this place? Lon Xian, and Little White were stunned. Wasn't it just a god skeleton in front of them? Was there a problem? There's a problem. Of course, there's a problem. How strong do you think the array that protected US is? It's not an exaggeration to say that it's the full defense of a god. The array of the void can reduce the impact of the great reincarnation. Even so, it's quite difficult to enter the sky burial ground. How could there be a god skeleton without any power left? Yin Nuashing frowned. Little White also realized this problem. He pulled the whiskers on his face and said hesitantly, "Could it be that this is also the Reincarnation Emperor? Are you saying that this is the previous life of the Reincarnation Emperor? When he was a god, he was also buried here. Buried here too?" Yin Nuashing immediately understood what he was talking about. "It's just a guess," Little White replied. "Gods will also die when they enter this place. However, we just saw a god emperor skeleton. Logically speaking, it's not possible. Moreover, the distorted rules of heaven and earth are still protecting that skeleton. So, I think, could it be that this god skeleton is related to that god emperor skeleton? The biggest possibility is that the two skeletons are actually the same person. They're the same god soul." Yin Nuashing pondered and looked at the golden skeleton. He frowned. Only the skeleton was left. There was no soul and no power left. He couldn't see anything. However, the possibility of Little White's guess was indeed very high. If that was the case, the sky burial ground would be the personal burial ground of the person named Ji Luanhui. Perhaps the god that died here was also the god himself? Waving his hand, Yin Nuashing shook his head and continued to walk forward. Lon Xiner followed him closely. If he wanted to confirm this, he still needed to explore further. If his guess was right, that Ji Luanhui was planning something big. Oh, the distorted rules of heaven and earth have become stronger. If we continue to walk forward, I'm afraid it will be dangerous with the current array. Not long after, Yin Nuashing stopped. He saw that the black energy field formed by the edge of the black magic formation was like a rubber ball being pressed by a finger. He frowned and waved his hand to take out another magic formation scroll. He unfolded another golden magic formation and covered the black magic formation. Only then did the turbulent energy field stabilize. Hiss! Another one. Little White felt a toothache and couldn't help but grimace. However, when he thought about how these arrays could be used repeatedly, he didn't feel so pained. After walking for more than 2 hours, Yin Nuashing did not directly fly in with his people. Instead, he chose to walk in a rather slow way. After going deep into the burial ground of heaven, he added another formation to maintain the safety of the situation. Only then did he feel at ease and walk in. After leaving the stone tablet of the path of reincarnation, he saw a few more skeletons. Beside each skeleton was something that was neither big nor small. It looked like something that could replace a grave. Every skeleton was complete. Their hands were folded on top of their bodies. They seemed very peaceful. Every skeleton had an extremely weak power remaining on them. Every kind of aura was different. They were like other people. However, to be able to stay here and not be killed by the distorted laws of heaven and earth, there was probably only one person who could stay here and not be killed by the distorted laws of heaven and earth. Yin Nuashing tried to use the Book of Epochs to go back in time. However, he failed. The deeper he went into the sky burial ground, the stronger the laws on the skeletons. He couldn't see what was going on. If he had the complete power of divine right, he could forcefully break through this situation. Unfortunately, he didn't have such conditions. This guy is alone, and his corpses are everywhere. Little White rolled his eyes fiercely. He was sure that these skeletons were all left behind by that Ji Luanhui. These skeletons were all over the sky burial ground. The dead are already gone. Can't you be merciful with your words? Yin Nuashing sighed. Although he also wanted to complain, he also felt that these skeletons should all belong to the same person. He didn't leave behind a body from his previous life when he reincarnated. Well, at most, only Quarter Moon's sky god body was left behind because it had other uses. The others were either destroyed or jumped into reincarnation and kept being destroyed. Even in the first few lives of the 135th era, only Tao fruits of the god level were left behind. Using reversed heaven reincarnation could break through the shackles of heaven and earth and reach that level. However, they couldn't reach the sky god level. The suppression of this era was too severe. There were probably only 3 grand eras. Each time a sky god was born, it was probably not as good as the low point of the previous era. Other eras were also in an absolutely dispirited state. The gods were hibernating, and the 3 sky gods were also missing. Until now, it was unknown whether the 5 sky god experts who appeared were born in this era. Yin Nuashing knocked on his head. His train of thought had gone astray again. The Black Land seemed to have no end. The sky was still dark, but it didn't make this place appear dark and lightless. Although there was no sunlight, there was still light. What's distorted here is only the rules, not heaven and earth. The sun still shines here, but it's invisible. The sun is still hanging above, and we can't see it. The sun shines here normally, so we can see things. Yin Nuashing softly answered the two's question, and then said, "This isn't the Black Dungeon. That's the real land of no light." Black Dungeon? It's a forbidden land in the southern plains that existed in the ancient age. It's a land of no light. Sunlight, starlight, even the light elements released by oneself, and everything related to light will be swallowed by that place. It's like a black hole. Except for sky gods, no one dares to go in. I went there once, and I was like a blind person in there. I couldn't see anything for 2 years, so I ran out in frustration. Yin Nuashing shrugged. I wasted 2 years, and I didn't see anything. It's really pure black, and I couldn't see anything. Xiaobai scratched his cheek. The southern plains. Are you talking about the ruins of the Dark Abyss? Ruins? Yin Nuashing was stunned. That place was destroyed? What a pity. I thought I would be able to figure out what was going on in there in this life. It seems that I won't be able to explore it again if I miss it. Brother Nuashing, in front. Lan Xen, suddenly shivered, and she quickly pointed to the front. Yin Nuashing and Xiaobai turned their gazes to the front at the same time. Then their eyes trembled, and their pupils shrank a little. This time, it's not just corpses everywhere, it's piled up into a pile. Xiaobai's mouth was dry. Yin Nuashing felt a toothache when she heard that. This guy's mouth is really... What appeared in front of them was a mountain of bones. It was a mountain of bones that was made up of golden and white bones. They were all human bones, and there were at least 1,000 of them. They were piled up into a small mountain, and around the mountain of bones, there were 5 light yellow stone tablets. They were actually the stone tablets that appeared on the reincarnation road. This guy is really stupid. He even moved the viewing stones on the reincarnation road here. That place is already boring enough. Yin Nuashing felt a toothache. Lan Xen and Xiaobai were a little speechless, so sometimes we don't even know what you deities, especially the deities of the reincarnation road, are thinking. Yin Nuashing thought for a while and nodded. I also don't know what I'm thinking. The 5 pale yellow reincarnation stone tablets stood facing each other. There was a huge pentagram formation on the ground. Various runes that looked like words were arranged in circles, forming a huge and incomparably complicated formation. Its complexity was not at all simpler than the formation beneath their feet. A bunch of Ji Luanhui, Lan Xiner exclaimed. Yin Nuashing was speechless. If that Ji Luanhui's coffin lid wasn't pressed down properly, he would definitely jump out. There was something placed on top of the 5 light yellow stone tablets. Xiaobai squinted his eyes, and he felt a familiar smell from it. Yin Nuashing also felt it, and her expression suddenly became weird. Phoenix blood, white tiger bones, azure dragon scales, black tortoise shell. The 4 items of the celestial phenomenon, 4 deities, and they were all mature items. When these 4 items were placed together, it really made one's imagination run wild. Chapter 1034. The 4 celestial phenomenon gods are the most ancient existences in the myriad god world. They have survived countless destruction and rebirth, and have existed since the birth of the myriad god world. They are the representatives of light, the most divine and holy existences, the symbol of life and vitality. They are the complete opposite of the 4 devils of heaven and earth, the 4 fiends of heaven and earth. Yin Nuashing said softly as he twirled a strand of hair. He looked up at Xiaobai and said, In a way, you have an inseparable relationship with the realm of the gods, but you are independent of each other. Your power protects the realm of the gods, and because of that, you are blessed by the realm of the gods. It has been like this since ancient times, and it cannot be changed. This is the absolute rule of the realm of the gods. Xiaobai was silent at first, and he was using his long hair to tie it up. When he heard what he said, he frowned and muttered, What are you trying to say? Does this have anything to do with this array? It can't be related. Yin Nuashing spread his hands helplessly. The arrangement of the array was too simple, and people with discerning eyes could understand many things in an instant. The 4 gods of celestial phenomenon have been around since the birth of the realm of the gods. Their rules and causality are equal to the realm of the gods. I guess this array is either borrowing the powerful rules of the realm of the gods, or using your power to bypass the rules and restrictions of the realm of the gods to do something. But the 4 gods of celestial phenomenon, there are 5 stones here. Lan Xien pointed at the last light yellow stone that they had pried from the reincarnation road. There was nothing on it, and it seemed a little out of place. Yin Nuashing looked at her seriously and said in a low voice, Xen, you are from the era of mythology? I wonder if you have heard of the five spirits of heaven and earth? I don't know if that one exists or is an illusion, the head of the four gods. Xiaobai frowned slightly. He knew this because the memory fragments in his blood told him. It doesn't exist. That thing is just an illusion. I know. Foam. And I talked about this in the ancient era. The fifth spirit of the five spirits of heaven and earth is an illusion. The realm of the gods doesn't have the energy to create the fifth spirit. Yin Nuoxing nodded. That's why it's empty, because it doesn't exist. On the black ground, thousands of skeletons were piled up to form a mountain of bones. White and golden skeletons were stacked together. Strands of black and light yellow aura interweaved and entangled with these skeletons. On the stone tablet of the reincarnation road, the objects of the four celestial phenomenon gods were emitting a weak fluorescent light. It was gentle like a flickering flame, but it emitted an incredible deterrent force. The 1,000 corpses placed here were all rather complete. They were all lying flat and stacked up in a disorderly manner. Moreover, the top of the mountain seemed to have reached its peak. If one more corpse was added, it might cause the mountain of bones to collapse. Did you find anything? Seeing his serious face, Xiaobai sighed in annoyance. You think there's a problem? Or, it's not a problem, but it's true that there's something special about it, Yin Nuoxing said with a faint smile. What do you mean? Yin Nuoxing smiled for a while before retracting his smile. He snapped his fingers and said indifferently, That Ji Luanhui? First of all, before saying this, it's all based on the assumption that these skeletons were left behind by Ji Luanhui himself. If it's true, then that fellow perhaps is planning to open up a reincarnation road in the modern realm. Does he want the reincarnation road that only appears in the law of death to appear in the modern realm? That fellow is using himself as a stepping stone to explore the reincarnation road. Xiaobai's reaction wasn't slow either. He immediately thought of this matter. Maybe. Yin Nuoxing nodded hesitantly and said, In the records of the reincarnation emperor, there's this sentence, suppressing the eternal reincarnation with my own body. He felt that the reincarnation of this world, the repeated repetition of this world, blocked the way forward. This idea was born in this world where the law of heaven and earth was suppressed to the limit. It's not strange that this idea was born in this world where the law of heaven and earth was suppressed to the limit. All his wild thoughts and guesses were because he didn't know these things. Perhaps he was once a god who had reincarnated many times and became a god many times. However, he didn't bring his memories to this world, so he abandoned his memories and chose the same path again. He wanted to go against the heaven and earth and forcefully change the law of heaven and earth to advance to the post-god level. Lonexine thought for a while and felt that something was wrong. But Brother Nuoxing, doesn't the small divine prefecture have the law of primordial age? In the primordial age, even the peaceful age, as opposed to the great age, many gods were born, right? Since the small divine prefecture has the law of heaven and earth from the primordial age, it should be easy to advance to the post-god level there, at least without the restriction of the law of heaven and earth. This problem is related to the state of little divine land itself, and some other aspects after entering the god level. The former is complicated, so let's not talk about it for now. Anyway, these two conditions are limited. After entering the god level, one's imprint of the gods will be engraved on the level of the rules of this world. This level cannot be touched, seen, or touched, but the imprint of the gods will pierce through all obstacles and engrave one's imprint on that place. However, the rules of heaven and earth at this time are not suitable for this kind of expert to appear, so it is extremely difficult to engrave one's imprint there. Difficult, very difficult, but definitely not inevitable. Otherwise, why would there still be gods in this world? And how many divine gods have been born? It can't all be left from the previous era. That's why the God's Mark was born. Yin Nuoxing snapped her fingers and continued. During the advancement, the God's Mark will tear apart the dark elemental barrier of the small divine prefecture and come into contact with the truest law of the realm of the gods. In this way, it will be difficult for the mark to remain. The problem has not changed. The law of heaven and earth in the realm of the gods is severely suppressed, so it is difficult for the god's mark to be engraved, and it will be impossible to advance to the post-god level. However, the mark itself is not very useful. At most, it will tell the world that you are here. Your strength is enough to attract its attention. Just like the moment a god advances to the divine realm, the divine god's declaration will spread throughout the entire void. There will be nowhere to hide, and no obstacles will be able to stop it from spreading. Countless people, countless lives, will know of your arrival. Yin Nuoxing said, "Oh God, how many people have been stopped by the ultimate leap? Countless talents have been overshadowed. The successful ones walk the road ahead alone, while those who look up to them struggle bitterly behind, unable to transcend." Little White sighed heavily. There were as many gods as the sand in the sea. There really were as many as the sand in the sea. Since ancient times, god-level elites have been born everywhere in the void. However, these glorious achievements were piled up at an even more shocking rate. No one knew how many people stood behind each god level, and how many failures there were. No one would pay attention to that. If one did not take that step, if one did not reach that level, no one would pay attention. Lon Xian Earth thought of something. Brother Nuoxing doesn't seem to be affected by the law of heaven and earth in the realm of the gods. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. Because, Brother Nuoxing, in your recent lives, didn't you step into the god level before you activated the samsara cycle? Lon Xianer said. The fruits of Tao left behind in those lives were all at the god level. Yin Nuoxing understood and waved her hand. There's indeed a special reason for that. It doesn't mean that I am not bound by the rules of the world. I said before that my body is still in this world. If I fall into a game, I will be bound by the rules of the game. That's what it is. I have a way to forcefully resist the suppression of this world's laws and enter the divine realm, but there are also many restrictions. Only those who are truly powerful enough can use this method. If I can't even do something like this, I wouldn't be worthy of being called a heavenly god, Yin Nuoxing casually said. Little White thought for a while and added, although I have fallen from the god level. Yin Nuoxing's face was full of resentment. Can't this guy not mention this? Little White trembled and quickly changed the topic before she was beaten up. Then, what is the connection between the path of reincarnation and the later divine realm? About this, even if you ask me, I won't be able to ask that Ji Luan Hui. Who knows what he is thinking? That's what it says, but who knows what he is thinking in his heart? The samsara cycle of heaven and earth is bound by the rules. Opening the path of reincarnation and destroying it, suppressing it and making it disappear. This way, the world will continue to move forward. That might be the case. Yin Nuoxing spread her hands. However, in reality, this kind of thinking was wrong. How could the path of reincarnation be destroyed? It came from the same source as the heaven and earth. It was an inseparable part of the rules. If it could really be destroyed, didn't that mean that person also had the ability to destroy this world and the entire Yuan realm? This kind of power was probably something that even the ancient first-generation great gods couldn't do. Therefore, everything was just a guess. If that Ji Luan Hui didn't jump out himself, they wouldn't know what he was thinking. After walking a few rounds around the path of reincarnation, which was built with the stone tablet of the path of reincarnation as the foundation and the object of the four gods as the source, there was a new harvest. However, it wasn't anything particularly important. It was just a sentence or two that was engraved under the stone tablet of the path of reincarnation. The cage is eternal. Trapped in the cage without seeing the light. Is it worth this last gamble? After I die, there will be no more reincarnation. Yin Nuoxing's cheeks trembled slightly. He kept having the feeling that this sentence was talking about himself and didn't seem to be talking about reincarnation. Could it be that his previous guesses were all wrong? Ji Luan Hui himself didn't have any special thoughts about the path of reincarnation. It's getting more and more complicated. Scratching his head in distress, Yin Nuoxing let out a sigh. This fellow really doesn't give me any peace of mind. He always comes up with such strange things. It wasn't that he hadn't researched about reincarnation before. It was just that he was too lazy to care too much about it. Rather than researching these vague and untouchable things that he could only come in contact with for a short period of time every time he died, he might as well throw his energy into this world. Frankly speaking, it's just that their paths are different. It's fine as long as he knows about the existence of reincarnation. He doesn't need to be like you, Ji Luan Hui, to go and torment yourself about reincarnation. It's hard to get any results. Time doesn't wait for him. By the time he figured out a little bit of it, others would probably have already come knocking on his door. However, this line of words is very imposing. The words of this era should have been left behind from this era. Little White let out a long sigh of relief. He could imagine the continuation from the aura that existed between these words. That Ji Luan Hui must have paid a huge price when he was carrying out the incomparably grand deduction process back then. Perhaps that price still hadn't been paid even until now. He had always been immersed in reincarnation and was already unable to extricate himself. So much so that he was using his own body as an experiment and observation object. Reincarnation after reincarnation, he kept returning to this place and kept burying himself to start a new life. There's something here. Lan Shiner patted away the dust on the light yellow stone tablet. Her movements were very careful. She was worried that the rules outside would injure her. She was also worried that the formation protecting her would destroy this stone tablet. Mei Mao slightly froze. She said to Yin Nuoxing, "These should be left behind by Ji Luan Hui himself. Brother Nuoxing, take a look at this." Yin Nuoxing went over to take a look. He was slightly stunned and read it out silently. The 10,000th and 7th life, the shackles are still there. I still can't decipher this secret of eternity. However, this is very normal. In the middle, there was a blurry and unclear thing. It seemed to have been erased by someone, but it also seemed to have naturally melted with the passage of time. At the end, it continued. This life has passed. Shed off the old flesh and blood body and be reborn once again. Yin Nuoxing was silent for a moment. His cheeks twitched slightly. He's a ruthless person, a person who has reincarnated for 10,000 lives. TSK, it's hard to imagine. I didn't expect that other than me. There's someone who has such perseverance. I just don't know how long he has been in reincarnation. How many centuries? Or could it be that the heavenly god reincarnation who appeared at the end of the Dark Age was Ji Luan Hui? He didn't say this sentence out loud, as it wasn't necessary. Most of the things that happened in the Dark Age wouldn't affect the present. For example, the mythological era that had completely disappeared. Therefore, it was better not to mention it. However, he couldn't help but sigh. This guy was really incredible. He had regrets in his heart and was unwilling to fall into depravity. He would rather drag the entire universe down with him to make his enemy pay the price. For this reason, he held his breath and repeatedly reincarnated. He didn't expect to meet someone at this time. Just for the sake of seeing through reincarnation, he let himself fall into reincarnation and wandered around. This wasn't something that could be explained with perseverance alone. A guy who throws caution to the wind is the most terrifying. Well, I'm like that too. I'm an out-and-out lunatic. I don't care about anything anymore. What do we have to be afraid of? Yin Nuoxing's expression was relaxed. He threw caution to the wind, and so did it. After reincarnating for more than 10,000 lives, or even more, he was sure that the guy was either in this world right now or was still flowing in the reincarnation path, waiting for the next time to appear in this world. After this record, Yin Nuoxing and the others found other traces left behind on this black land. Oh, someone else has been to this place before. Yin Nuoxing found a trace that was completely different from the traces left behind by Ji Luan Hui himself. He squinted his eyes slightly. Someone had actually come to this place before? What's wrong with that? Didn't they just come in for a walk? Look, we can even sleep here without a problem. Little White shrugged and said indifferently. Yin Nuoxing glanced at him speechlessly. Since they can come in, then it must be Don't forget where this place is. This is a forbidden area, an eternal black land. Ji Luan Hui placed his life's research results here so casually because he calculated that no one would come here. This is the deepest part of the sky burial ground. who would jump into the forbidden area for no reason. If they jump here, the grass on their grave would be several zhang tall in the next second. Whitey choked and angrily shut its mouth. It had been too smooth in this place for so long that it had forgotten that they were still in the forbidden area. This was a place called the burial ground of heaven. A heavenly god had fallen here and buried an entire world. The laws here were extremely distorted. Normal and abnormal life forms couldn't survive here. God? He looked pensive. Yin Nuashing sighed and nodded helplessly. To be able to enter this place and leave traces here, other than a god, there shouldn't be anyone else, right? Why does this annotation look like scribbles? Lon X and looked at the strange words on the ground that looked like a drawing, but they weren't drawings or symbols. She couldn't help but frown. She couldn't understand it all. These didn't look like words. These are symbols used to deduce the god statue. Yin Nuashing glanced at them and instantly came to a realization. He took out the Book of Epic and looked at the strange marks on the ground that looked like they were scratched by a chicken. He then shook his head in frustration. No, these aren't regular symbols. I can't decipher them. These look like meaningless words left behind by a drunk guy. Of course, I can't decipher them. Little White rolled his eyes. What? These are real symbols used to deduce the god statue. Yin Nuashing glared at him and then frowned. But it's indeed a little strange. There's a unique charm and power, but I can't decipher them at all. These aren't because they were written. They were directly engraved by the god's soul. Either they were distorted by someone, or they were left like this. In any case, I can't decipher them. In the end, he shrugged, indicating that he couldn't do anything about this matter. Little White and Lon Exon, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Other than this, there were many other things that looked like words left behind on the ground. They were very similar to the words left behind by Ji Luan Hui. Obviously, they were left behind by the same person. Did he leave something here to remind or warn the people who came here? Or he probably hoped that someone could see these and help him deduce them. Yin Nuashing's finger brushed past the unfinished words at the end of the symbols. He frowned. What was this? Unfinished research. It's still on the road and can't stop. Yin Nuashing murmured and rummaged at the side. He even gently dug up a handful of soil. After a while, he found the traces left behind by Ji Luan Hui. He looked at it for a while, narrowed his eyes, and smiled. He said, as expected, Ji Luan Hui left this array here. He hoped that someone could see this and help him deduce it. This person should be an enlightened being. That's why we found a row of irregular symbols used by the god statue. When it's used to deduce something too secretive and powerful, the symbols will indeed be distorted. If that's the case, why didn't he leave this outside? If he left it in the Forbidden Land, there wouldn't be many people who would come here, right? Little White couldn't help but ask. Yin Nuashing was silent. He rolled his eyes fiercely and said, "Go ask a ghost." Little White was stunned. He turned around and asked Lon Exeter, "Where's the ghost?" Lon Exeter, there was only one different mark left here, and it was the one they saw just now. They couldn't understand what it looked like before it was distorted. Yin Nuashing imprinted it and threw it to the Book of Epics for analysis. He couldn't be bothered to wait. He walked around and kept digging for the traces left behind by Ji Luan Hui. After a long time, he frowned. Strange. These dozens of messages repeatedly mentioned a place. This place, what place? Little White and Lon Xian were curious. Yin Nuashing frowned and said, "A very ordinary place." But it's not ordinary at all. I say it's ordinary because that place is really ordinary. Yin Nuashing frowned. Then what's not ordinary about it? Little White asked with his arms crossed. That place is also called the Abyss of 10,000 Spirits. Yin Nuashing's voice was serious. It's located in the Three Elements world. Chapter 1035. Myriad Spirit Abyss? The Three Elemental World? What's that place for? Whitey shook his head in confusion, yawned, and asked, "That place?" Yin Nuashing was silent. Then he rolled his eyes and said, "How would I know? I only know about that place, but I've never been there." "Ah, Lon Sheener and Whitey were both stunned. Yin Nuashing waved his hand and sighed. The three-elemental world was quite famous in the remote antiquity era. You can say that it was infamous. The three-elemental world was very weak, and its strongest was only equivalent to the quasi-mortal level in the divine world. In that void, there were many mortal worlds, so they were very weak. However, there was a place that even the strongest of the eight-elemental world was alarmed by. It was a remote world in the lower plane of the three-elemental world. There's no way to know who discovered it in the first place. There are strange traces that seem to be taboo tracks that fill the entire space. It seems to be the work of a deity. Obviously, that place doesn't exist naturally. It's impossible for a deity to be born in the three elements realm. It's all because of the rules of heaven and earth. Yin Nuashing paused for a moment, pondered for a moment, then continued. After that, the news of that place quickly spread back to the eight elements realm and also to the myriad gods realm, which attracted many powerful beings to investigate. So far, everything is still normal. You didn't go there? Whitey glanced at him. As far as he knew, this guy would also go there when he encountered something interesting. No, at that time, I hadn't reached the quasi-mortal level, so I didn't have time to go there. Yin Nuashing shrugged and said, when I reached the quasi-mortal level, I forgot about it. At that time, the disturbance of the myriad spirit abyss was already over. Back to the topic. After that mysterious place was discovered, it attracted many powerful beings from the eight elemental world. Of course, not only the beings from the divine world were among them. At that time, the divine world hadn't been sealed yet, so there were many extraterrestrials everywhere. The divine world became the center of the void, and there were many beings from all over the void. Therefore, it can be assumed that the things that are widely known in the divine world are known by at least half of the void. Yin Nuashing laughed bitterly. Ever since that place was discovered, almost everyone who knew about it became a suicide squad. That's right, that place is a huge hole, a hole as big as the sky. It's even worse than the huge hole that exists in the realm of the gods. Anyone who dares to explore it is on the verge of death. Great rocks spreading its wings. I don't know what exactly happened. I was in the divine world, so I don't know what the deities and gods are doing in the three-elemental world. However, some news came back. A planet with life that was originally peaceful suddenly became violent, and a powerful energy burst out. Many deities were seriously injured. Although the deities and gods will be suppressed a lot when they go to the three-elemental world, they won't be injured easily. The quasi-mortal level is beyond all rules. The reason why they are suppressed is because of the protection left by the first great deity who didn't want the people from the upper realm to disturb the lower realm. However, deities are still deities, and only those who are at the same level can hurt them. That's an ordinary planet with life. It's everywhere in the star field. Compared to other planets with life at the same time, that planet is too ordinary, and its development speed is extremely slow. That's all. Yin Nuashing suddenly spread his hands and announced that he had finished talking. Lon Sheener and Whitey were stunned. That's it. That's all. The rest is how many deities and Empyrean gods died at the same time. Oh, right, there's one more thing. It's the conclusion left behind at the end. After being unable to enter that planet for a long time and seeing no hope, they decided to stop. When they were about to retreat, the most powerful Empyrean gods joined forces to perform a divination, and they discovered an extremely shocking fact. Yin Nuashing smiled mysteriously. Guess what? Whitey and Lon Sheener racked their brains, and after thinking for a while, they spread their hands helplessly. It was too difficult for them to think about these things. On that ordinary planet with life, there are actually several quasi-immortal level imprints. Yin Nuashing's words were shocking, and Whitey and Lon Sheener's expressions froze. That was just a land of mortals, so how could there be quasi-mortal level imprints? Wait, could it be that in that planet with life, someone stepped into the quasi-mortal level, and the imprints were there? Whitey said, and even she found it unbelievable. How could a mortal world give birth to a quasi-immortal level expert? Almost. It's very close to the truth, and the only thing left is what happened in the middle. Yin Nuoxing nodded and said, when one steps into the quasi-mortal level and becomes a deity, the god's imprint will penetrate everything, and it will be imprinted in the rules of the world. Now, let's put it another way. What will happen if one steps into the quasi-mortal level in another place? The god's imprint will be imprinted in the rules of the world where one is promoted, or it will be imprinted in the rules of the void, Whitey said. She knew about these things. Then, what about the original world? What will happen to the original world where the deity was born? Yin Nuoxing grinned. Whitey was stunned. She really didn't know about this, and she had never thought about it. She guessed that no one had studied this aspect before. Lon Sheener also shook her head. She also didn't know about these things. When she was sealed, she was just a little girl. Even if she was in the mythological era, it wouldn't change much. Well, this is the key point. After a quasi-mortal level expert is promoted, the world where he is born will also have the god's imprint, and this imprint will protect that world. Do you understand now? Yin Nuoxing said. In other words, although it's impossible for a quasi-mortal level expert to be born in that world, someone could have gone out from there and come to the 8 elements realm and become a quasi-mortal level expert. Lon Sheener suddenly understood. That's pretty much it. Aren't there still some legends circulating in the realm of the gods? People who came from the lower realm, or even mortals from the 3 primordial realms, are inconceivable. The bodies of mortals can actually pass through the barrier of the primordial realm and come to the land of the gods. Yin Nuoxing sounded surprised. After a while, she said, that's about it. That was originally a very ordinary place, but it had an extremely abnormal god's imprint, and it released the real god's might. In the 3 elements realm, a god-level power appeared, and it ignored the protection of the first great deity. It's just like when I used the power of chaos the other day. But that's different. The more a person from the upper world crosses over, the stronger the suppression will be. Even if chaos can ignore the protection of the first great deity to a certain extent, the 5 elements realm is the limit. When he went to the 4 elements realm and crossed the barrier of the 4 elements realm, he couldn't ignore the protection effect. In other words, the god's imprint in that world released the real god's might. That's impossible? After Whitey finished speaking, he was also confused. In a place where all the gods were suppressed, the true power of the gods had appeared. Moreover, it was released by a few insignificant imprints. This was simply inconceivable. Even if the god's imprint can protect the birthplace of the gods, it's impossible to release the god-level power in the 3 elements realm. Yin Nuoxing said softly, this question has been left for a long time, and no one can answer it. Anyway, this matter was left unsettled. Because many gods and deities died there, some people gave it a name, and it's called the Abyss of Myriad Spirits. He pondered for a while, turned his head to look at the messages on the ground, and frowned. Now, that Jilun Hui, Reincarnation Emperor, has reincarnated many times, and in the deduction left behind, this place was mentioned many times. However, it was only mentioned, and it didn't say anything specific. It could be seen that Jilun Hui cared a lot about this place. Perhaps he wanted to go to that place. However, the place that was discovered in the primordial age had undergone 3 great reincarnations, and the entirety Yuan realm had been cleansed 3 times. Even if there was a god's imprint there, it couldn't be left behind. But how did Jilun Hui know about that place? Yin Nuoxing was puzzled. That was a place where there was a huge commotion in the primordial age, and there were no records of that place in this age. In the history of the entire age, the Abyss of Myriad Spirits was just a place that caused a small ripple. A group of gods and deities went there one after another, but they didn't get anything. They also suffered heavy casualties, and it was far away in the 3 elements realm. With all these reasons added together, that place wouldn't be remembered by many people. Some extremely ancient books might still have records of that place, and he only knew about it because he came from the primordial age. This, even if you ask me, I'm even more confused than you. Little White also shook his head blankly. The memory fragments left behind in his bloodline were very one-sided, and there was absolutely no record of this world's anecdotes. The four of them were more or less the same. After their lives were completely destroyed, they basically couldn't remember anything. The only thing left behind were the remnant memory fragments in their bloodline that would never disappear. After searching around for a while, they didn't find any more valuable things. Yin Nuashing and the other two sighed. In the end, they didn't find what they wanted to find. It turned out that it was just the remains of four people that had once been in this world. However, they unexpectedly learned of something that made them confused. This matter involved a lot of things. Not to mention anything else, just that mountain of bones was enough to frighten them. So, are you reliable or not? Are you reliable or not? Yin Nuashing grabbed Little White's white hair that was hanging down and gnashed his teeth. They had spent a lot of effort to come here, and after a period of torment, the things they found in the end were worlds apart from what they were looking for. It was like asking him to go to a place and find a person, but in the end, he only found a fingernail. Ouch, 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 ouch. I have something to say. I want to refute. This I also don't know. The resonance of the four gods didn't say that it would definitely resonate with the four gods themselves. After listening to him howl for a while, Yinhuashing let go of his hand and fiercely rolled his eyes. Are you reliable or not? That, we didn't find it this time, but we will definitely find next time. Next time, hey. Little White cupped his face with his hands and acted cute. Yin Nuashing's face darkened. He glared at Little White and angrily carried him back. Feng Er's reliable appearance had long been engraved in his heart. How could this white tiger be so silly and cute at this time? He sighed and didn't say anything. He didn't intend to find it in one go. In fact, he didn't have much hope at first. He was prepared to wander all over the Jiuan region. It was only when Little White patted his chest and said that he would find it in a while that he had a little hope. In the end, they wandered around the burial ground of heaven and found something unexpected. He didn't know what to say. The burial ground of heaven wasn't small, but Yin Nuashing and the others didn't intend to explore it completely. After accidentally going to the center and seeing the array set up by the four gods and a pile of bones, they went back home. They didn't have any interest in the other places of the burial ground of heaven. This was a place left behind by Ji Luanhui. What did he arrange here? This answer should be the most correct. At least that Ji Luanhui was once a god-level expert. However, they still didn't know the connection between this forbidden area and Ji Luanhui. Was it the latter who occupied this place? Or was it that he simply made this place himself? For example, he was once a god-level expert, until he bumped into a transparent wall one day. Then, he hardened his heart and laid down a big plan. These were not just words. Many god-level experts had left behind a backup plan. They either continued to live in the world and continued to evolve according to their path, or they had already died and disappeared from the world, falling into the cycle of reincarnation. They had also been moving forward according to their own path, but each person's path was different. It didn't take long for them to get out of the burial ground of heaven. When they reached the outside world, many magic array barriers were removed. Lon Exer stretched her body and muttered, finally out. That place was suffocating, and it was even more suffocating inside the magic array. Yin Nuashing was helpless. If it wasn't for this method, they wouldn't have been able to get in. In the end, when they reached the center of the burial ground of heaven, they actually used 5 kinds of magic arrays, both defensive and offensive. Although these magic arrays could be restored on their own, it would take a long time for them to be fully restored in this world. For the time being, they could only be used once. Unless he went to the starry sky and absorbed the energy of thousands of star regions to restore them. Therefore, he felt a burst of heartache. So heartache, he couldn't help but pick up Whitey and pinch his cheeks. Why are you pinching me again? Whitey looked aggrieved. I'm not a sage. I can make mistakes too. You're one of the 4 celestial gods. You're many levels higher than a sage. Yin Nuashing's words made Whitey speechless, and he mumbled something incomprehensible. In the end, he admitted that he was unlucky. He had wasted more than 10 divine grade magic arrays, and he had even found the wrong place. these are all foundations. This weak world can't restore them. For the time being, they can only be used once. Lon Exine chimed in from the side, making Whitey angry. However, this was indeed his own fault, and he had nothing to refute. He could only keep silent and try his best to use the resonance of the four gods, hoping to find a specific place directly. There's no response. It's still in the west. There's a ball in the west. Whitey was angry. Even this induction was playing tricks on him. He was deliberately making things difficult for him. Yin Nuashing patted his head, sighed, and comforted him. The west is the west. Take your time to find it. As long as there's no problem with your induction, and they're indeed in the ultimate plane region, everything will be fine. About this, don't worry. Whitey laughed awkwardly. If he threw out an answer that even he wasn't sure of, he was afraid that he would be eaten alive. When they came out, they didn't see the gods of heaven looking at the burial ground of heaven. Yin Nuashing and the others didn't pay much attention to them. They took a look and then turned to leave. As soon as the fire phoenix was about to continue flying to the west, Yin Nuashing's heart trembled. He raised his head abruptly and looked around blankly. His face was like a gloomy, rainy day in the evening, and it suddenly became gloomy. After so many years, he actually felt frightened. What was the meaning of this? He quickly took out something from the pendant. It was a perfectly round, ice-blue bead about the size of half a fist. As soon as he held it in his palm, before he could even move it, the crystal ball suddenly became dim, and cracks appeared on it. Crack! The sudden cracking sound startled Lon, Exine, and Whitey. They retracted their gazes from the burial ground of heaven and saw Yin Nuashing's face, which couldn't be any darker. They were shocked. Lon Exine quickly asked, "Brother Nuashing, what's wrong? Is there something urgent?" Yin Nuashing took a deep breath and shook his head. "I don't know. A storm is coming. Something is going to happen. What's going to happen? I don't know. I don't know what it will affect. I can't use the astrolabe, and I can't use the Book of Epochs. What's going to happen? What is it targeting?" In his right hand, there was still half a dark blue crystal ball. Powder slid down his fingers and palm, which made his hand tremble slightly. An expert at his level, or rather, he used to be an expert at that level, had an extremely powerful god soul. He could feel that this kind of inexplicable thing was unusually powerful. It could be said that he had foresight. He could sense many things that were going to happen in advance. "I actually feel uneasy." Yin Nuashing's beautiful face was slightly distorted. This kind of feeling was suffocating. His distorted face finally froze into an extremely crazy smile. His right hand squeezed hard, and the crystal ball was crushed. "How many years has it been? When I faced them, I didn't have this kind of feeling. Are you coming? Or was it something else?" However, could there really be something else that could make him feel uneasy? Whitey also frowned. Recently, the omens of danger have been jumping more and more frequently. First, it was the pillar of creation. Then, a wisp of consciousness appeared. Now, the world fortune pearl is broken. It's really hard to not be wrong. He also confessed that he felt uneasy, and his eyebrows kept twitching. As one of the four celestial gods of celestial phenomenon, his foresight was even more sensitive than the divine gods in the realm of the gods. When Lon Exine heard this, her beautiful face was full of worry. Her heart was heavy. Was something going to happen recently? Chapter 1036. Yin Nuashing gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "It doesn't matter. It's just a sign. After so many years of suffering, I won't die in this era. In this era, I will crawl back even if I have to. Crawl back. That's too embarrassing." Little White smiled bitterly and said, "After all, you used to be an expert on the starry sky throne. You stood at the top of the divine realm. The so-called divine realm. It's just hopeless." Yin Nuashing's face darkened. This was even more serious. However, this concern was indeed. He did not have much confidence that he could embark on that path. The divine realm was above the divine realm. Many divine realm experts were helpless. They could not find a way to break through in the past. In this era, they might not be able to find a way. It was too elusive. Even a corner of it was something that could not be found. Lon Exar saw that he was gradually calming down and asked, "Where should we go now? Continue to look for little Ching and the others? Do we really have to travel all over the divine realm?" Yin Nuoxing was stunned. After thinking for a while, he shook his head and said, "It's just a saying. However, we don't know. Many people should know about this place. Specifically, many demons should know about it." Huh? Lon Exar was stunned. Yin Nuoxing smiled and said, "Little White said that if Little Ching and the others are really hiding in the ultimate plane region, this place is a paradise for demons. Their habitat is either a sacred or frightening place. Even if they do not intend to change the surrounding environment, it will still be the same. It is their own aura that has influenced the environment." Lon Exar thought for a while and understood. "Brother Nuoxing, are you going to ask someone?" Yin Nuoxing nodded and said, "Rather than searching blindly, it's better to catch a demon and ask. After all, this white tiger does not seem to be reliable." Xiaobai was speechless and looked at him gloomily. It was not his fault that he could not find her. That stupid housekeeper was famous for her hide-and-seek. She had left them in the star field and ran back to hide for 1,000 years. Now, hiding for 2 eras was a small matter. But he seemed to have said that everything would be left to him. In that case, it was his own fault. When Yin Nuoxing saw his sudden realization and dejected look, she spread her hands and reached out to pat his head. "Let's go. It's time to go to the next place." After leaving the burial ground of heaven, they headed east for a distance. There was an origin pillar there. It was slightly to the east. They hadn't paid attention to it when they were in the burial ground of heaven. Within the hidden pillar of creation, Yin Nuoxing skillfully repeated the actions that he had already repeated more than a dozen times. He once again awakened the celestial separation formation that was slumbering in the void of the God realm and inspected the origin pillar. We are still lacking the light element. So far, the light element seal on all the origin pillars that we have encountered is so weak that it is almost destroyed. If we don't get rid of this problem, we won't be able to activate the Great Formation. Yin Nuoxing sighed and worked on the huge iron pillar without complaint. Why did the laws of heaven and earth destroy the light element first? Lon Exar asked as she looked at the formation that she could not understand. Who knows? Yin Nuoxing shook her head. The dark element that was destroyed first was erased by them. After my battle in the Ganyuan region, the dark element was interfered with and erased from the laws of this world. All the dark element in this world immediately disappeared and became non-existent. Those who still possess the dark element would have their existence distorted. The element that they possess is still the dark element, but no one would recognize it. Even the possessor would not know it. Only heavenly gods could resist the interference of the laws of this world. Even those who possess the bloodline of heavenly gods might not be able to resist it. At that moment, when the dark element was erased, only the heavenly gods in the divine realm remembered the dark element. Everyone else had forgotten about it. Then, as time slowly passed, generations of heavenly gods passed away, and their memories were brought into their graves. In the end, no one knew what the dark element was. Yin Nuoxing raised his head and sighed. That's what they say, but those gods know about the element of darkness. They can also notice that the people around them can't recognize the element of darkness. Those who are interested will record it down. However, everything recorded about the element of darkness in this world has already been destroyed. They can only record it again. Even so, there's still not much information left. Time is the most merciless and the most sturdy. It can erase everything that is exposed to the river of time. If time can't take it away, don't worry, there's still the great samsara. With both sides working together, I guarantee that only a tiny bit of the things that transcend time can survive. Little White and Lon Exar were speechless. This was the choice of the era itself. No one could stop it. Brother Nuoxing, at that time, after that battle, why would the dark element be erased by them? Lon Exar was a little puzzled. Yin Nuoxing's hand trembled. After a while, he recovered and continued to repair the magic circle calmly. He pondered for a while and said in a low voice, There are two reasons. The first reason should be me. They wanted to erase me completely. They wanted to erase everything about me from the realm of the gods and from this world. The second reason is that they knew that this kind of power was very dangerous. So, they decided to destroy it. Back then, I used the dark element and the netherworld ruin sword to kill more than 100 of them who were above the heavenly god level. This is the realm of the gods, a sacred land created by the first great deity. Their interference has also affected this world to a certain extent, but it is not as perfect as imagined. The heavenly god-level life forms were not affected. The records of the dark element were only erased, but did not prevent others from re-recording it. Also, they erased everyone's knowledge of the dark element other than the heavenly gods, making it so that no one can sense the dark element in this world. However, the dark element that exists in the realm of the gods still exists in a state of existence. Look at the enchantment of the little divine land. If they really had the ability to destroy all the dark element, the enchantment of the little divine land would not have survived. So, they only erased a large part of it. They did not really destroy it. The dark element hidden under the ground of the realm of the gods did not disappear. However, it is true that the dark element can no longer be born. Yin Nuoxing waved his hand and rearranged a few elemental magic circles. He pushed them into the pillar of creation. Then, he took out a bright gold and a black magic circle and began to repair it. In summary, the dark element still exists in this world. It is just that no one can sense it and no one can use it. Other than me, I am the only one in this world who has the dark element. Speaking of which, the dark element is not considered to have been erased by the world. As for why this world got rid of the light element first, the light element has existed since the beginning of creation. It is one of the 7 elements of creation. As for why it is gone, I am not too sure. There is no way to investigate it. The Pillar of Creation and the Book of Epics did not tell me anything about it. Yin Nuoxing shook his head. This was an unsolved case. Who knew what the world was thinking, getting rid of the light element first? In this world, in the past tens of thousands of years, only one light element possessor was born, and that was Yaohua. Yin Nuoxing did not count himself. He was just a stowaway, an undead of old. Natural selection, survival of the fittest? Whitey tilted her head and said, Then it is even more impossible to eliminate the light element, right? Yin Nuoxing sneered and shook his head. The light element is only slightly weaker than the dark element. Both of them are powerful elements that can break the restraints of the natural order. If you ask me, the possibility of being envied by the heavens is higher, or rather, this is more likely. The possessor of the light element is too powerful, so it got rid of the possessor of the light element. Whitey said, the light element still existed in the divine realm. It was just that the possessor of the light element was no longer born, just like the dark element. Something like that. Do you still remember what I said? The world has 3 elements of beginning: energy, natural order, and energy. The light element is also energy, and it is almost exhausted. Even the seal of the light element on the pillar of creation is gradually weakening. Perhaps this is the reason why the possessor of the light element could not be born. Yin Nuoxing said, Ding! With a soft sound, a bright golden light shone beside the 9 rays of light in the pillar of creation. 10 different colors meandered from the bottom all the way to the top. The thousands of magic circles around the pillar of creation also gradually disappeared. Done. Whitey yawned and stretched her neck. This is so boring. Repairing the pillar of creation is not something an ordinary person can do. I think it's okay. Yin Nuoxing shrugged. It has been repaired like this for several eras. When I was chosen to be the repairman of the pillar of creation, I was hit by a tidal wave of information that rushed into my mind. There is a lot of information about the pillar of creation and the many magic circles that maintain its existence, stabilize this world, and seal the bottom part of the pillar of creation. There were more than 100,000 kinds of things, and my consciousness was knocked out. Xiaobai sighed emotionally. You've had a hard time too. It has not been easy. Yin Nuashing and Lan Xn both sighed deeply. After solving the problem of the Pillar of Creation, Yin Nuashing opened the treasure map and glanced inside. At this time, the 6 pillars of creation in the northeast and southeast of the ultimate plane region had been repaired. Next, they would go to the remaining 2 regions. Because there are not many people living in the ultimate plane region, there is not even a name for it. There are not many cities, but every city is a large city. At this time, the closest city to us is Lingwu City. The human and demon races are split in 4 to 6. Brother Nuashing, you won't get into any trouble if you go in, right? Lan Xin said with a smile. Every time Yin Nuashing entered the city, it was not a small matter. He was really like a banished immortal. Not only was he full of a mortal aura, but he was also independent of the mortal world. He would stay in a city for a few days and then leave. Although this was also because he was busy. Moreover, every time he entered a city, he would cause a lot of trouble. He was once known as the little tyrant of demolishing cities. Yin Nuashing was silent for a while. He glanced at her and said angrily, "It's okay. I won't argue with them." Lan Xin, and Xiao Bai were stunned. Did he change his mind today, or did the sun rise from the west? I will beat them up according to the severity of the matter. I guarantee that no one will cause any trouble, Yin Nuashing said with a smile. His right thumb fiercely swiped across the space in front of him, causing Lan Xin and Whitey to tremble. With that swipe, a crack appeared in the space. It turned out that this irascible person wanted to beat them to death without saying a word. Under such circumstances, no one would cause any trouble. Anyone who caused trouble would be sent underground or thrown millions of miles into the sky. Otherwise, they would simply disappear from the face of the earth. Whitey let out a long sigh. Forget it. Anyway, you are like this. Who in this world would dare to provoke you? Lan Xin thought for a while. I think there are quite a few. After all, Brother Nuashing is in this state on the surface. He can't possibly emit that aura everywhere he goes. That would cause even more trouble. Whitey thought about it and agreed. He did not say anything. There was nothing to say. Looking at the dark expression on the person's face, he must have planned everything. He said that he would beat them up according to their strengths. This beating would probably be the matter of half of the city. Oh no, that was something that happened more than 10 years ago. If he were to take action now, it would probably be a problem of a trap. Then, let's pray for Lingwu City first. We're just going in to collect some information that is probably not very powerful. So, please treat us as heir. Whitey clasped his hands together and muttered something. After that, he bowed to the air. Amit Ba. Yin Nuashing had a strange expression. When did you learn the tricks of those baldies? Immeasurable heavenly lord. I am just... Ow. Yin Nuashing gave the white tiger a slap on the head. She rolled her eyes fiercely. This guy, he even said his Taoist name. Was he really going to make things difficult for the baldies? In the center of the ultimate plane region, Lingwu City was like the other major regions and the central cities of the 4 regions of the Divine Prefecture. It was an extremely prosperous city that spanned hundreds of thousands of miles. There were a lot of living beings gathered there, and they were all mixed up. The human race was the largest, but there were also shadows of the demon race in the city. In the realm of the gods, foreign races like the demon race were not excluded from entering the city. After all, not all demon races were mortal enemies with the human race. Therefore, if a demon race appeared on the street, it would not cause much surprise. At most, they would look away after a few glances. However, in these huge cities, there were also a small number of living beings that could not be exposed to the light. For example, the demon race was lurking in the shadows, and no one knew about it. The ultimate plane region was a paradise for demonic beasts and demonic beasts. There were many members of the demon race. The central city that was built by humans and demons was called Lingwu City. In this city, there were fewer humans than the demon race. This large city spanned hundreds of thousands of miles. The population was also astronomical. No one had investigated the exact number. In any case, the population was in the hundreds of millions. It was very normal. Moreover, these central cities had a long history. They did not just appear in this era. As early as the later period of the primordial age, these central cities had already existed. In the first half of that era, they were still in their embryonic form. As they slowly developed, they were known to everyone. Even if they were turned into ashes, they would slowly be rebuilt and preserved. Gradually, they became central cities and gathered countless people. We are going to look for someone. Are you sure that method will work? Outside Lingwu City, Yin Nuoxing looked at the endless stream of people coming and going outside the city gate. Her face paled a little. Don't worry. If we make a little noise, we might attract the attention of Azure Dragon and the others. Little White rode on his shoulder and waved her hand. Yin Nuoxing was suspicious and said, "My aura is too different from Feng Yue's. It is also very different from Quarter Moon's aura. If it was in the past, even I would not be able to recognize myself. Are you sure that Little Blue and the others can sense my aura and come out? Moreover, aren't they sleeping? That's why we have to wake them up. However, we can use this as a backup plan. I am not 100% confident." Little White shrugged and pressed down her long hair that was blown by the wind. She raised her head and looked at the strange beast that flew over her head. She was a little unhappy and snorted softly. Roar! That strange beast originally had an arrogant look. However, it was suddenly shocked by Little White's aura. It was so frightened that its entire body trembled. That huge body of 100 feet suddenly fell from the sky and lay on the ground, trembling in fear. Its owner was a demon race expert. Seeing this, he was also at a loss. He had just been thrown down. Yin Nuoxing stretched out her hand and knocked on this fellow's head. Naughty! Che, a demon beast that dares to fly over my head. It doesn't exist in this world. Little White pouted and mumbled. Yin Nuoxing was speechless. This was one of the 4 celestial phenomenon gods. Fortunately, he had disguised himself a little. Moreover, because he had a soul contract with him, he was able to mix the auras of the 2 of them, making them half human and half demonic. It was not that easy for others to recognize them. In the martial spirit city, the huge city walls were smooth and glossy. They were green and blue in color. Looking down from below, one could even see that the upper part of the city walls was transparent, as if it had merged with the sky. Yin Nuoxing and the other 2 followed the crowd and squeezed toward the city gate. This time, there was no large group entering the city. He had a faint sense of awareness, so he did not attract much attention. However, if his whole family squeezed in like a swarm of bees, he was sure that there would be a wide passageway. Their group would be too conspicuous no matter where they went. When they were about to enter the city, Yin Nuoxing took a step back and tilted his head to look at the city wall beside him. There was a portrait pasted on the wall. To be more specific, it was a wanted poster and a bounty poster. It was hung high on the city wall and was protected by a weak energy. It would not be eroded by the wind and sun. When Lon Exine, and Little White saw him stop, they also turned their heads to take a look. Then they were stunned and their bodies shook. This, oh my God! In the portrait, it was the face of a young man. He was about 15 or 16 years old. He was very handsome and looked like a girl. However, he did not look feminine. It was the kind of pure beauty. There was a hint of laziness and indifference between his eyebrows. However, his light purple hair was very eye-catching. The 3 of them had almost forgotten his appearance because it was Yin Nuoxing's appearance from a few years ago, almost 10 years ago. Even he did not recognize him when he looked at him. Who put this up? Yin Nuoxing's face was filled with black lines. At that time, he was completely different from the current him. If it was said that at that time, he could still be seen as a boy, but now, he was alive and well as a girl. Before sensing his life aura, no one would think that he was a man. His appearance, voice, and demeanor were all much worse than before. At this moment, someone actually used his previous portrait to offer a bounty on him. 50,000 kilograms of celestial-grade Xian crystals. Oh, why are you so cheap? Little White tried hard to hold back his laughter and said in his soul, a powerhouse whose value was comparable to that of a divine realm expert turned out to be only worth 50,000 kilograms of celestial-grade Xian crystals. Those who knew the truth were about to laugh their heads off. Lan Xian also could not help laughing. Then, she frowned slightly. She did not know who was so bold to put a bounty on him. Who knows? Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes. It's strange. After so many years, someone still put a bounty on me. He didn't say who he was, but he said the place. It's in this city. If you catch me, bring me there. There will be someone to receive me. It's strange. This matter was temporarily put aside. It was not that he did not care about it. Now, he was looking for a place to find out. After squeezing into the Lingwu city, Yin Nuoxing chose a restaurant that was slightly high-end and well-decorated. It was popular. He didn't choose a place that was reserved for those extraordinary people. It seemed that he was troubled by all kinds of situations and had a psychological shadow, so he didn't want to go to those places. Most of the people who went in and out of these restaurants were cultivators. Ordinary people had their own restaurants, and cultivators basically wouldn't go to those places. The food used in cultivators' restaurants was not ordinary. It was okay for cultivators to eat it, but ordinary people will be stuffed to death by the energy. Recently, there are many extraordinary people in the ultimate plane region. They are flying all over the sky looking for something. Some time ago, the strange phenomenon that appeared disturbed many powerful existences. The disciples and descendants of those hidden old monsters have come out. They are very powerful. However, if you want to count them, most of them are from the previous generation. That's because you haven't seen those who can be counted as part of the younger generation. Except for those Divine Realm experts, I saw a fierce man who was at the Divine Emperor Realm and was definitely less than 2,000 years old. He beat up several people on the Supreme Being list of the Ultimate Plane region. 2 days ago, at the Crooked Cloud Mountain, that battle was indeed earth-shattering. However, a Divine Emperor Realm expert suppressing a Divine King Realm expert is a bit undignified. Shoo, he suppressed his realm. You can't let others hear what you just said. They are too overbearing. Moreover, those hidden forces have sent out a call to invite many experts to gather. They want the younger generation to mobilize their forces to help find a person. Those ancient forces are the transcendent forces in the divine realm. Who are they looking for? Why are they making such a big fuss? Yes, it's hard to say. It's that kid on the city gate. It's better not to talk about his taboo name. People will die. You're exaggerating. It's just a few words. All right, who is that kid? Can't say. The guy's like a ghost. Let's not talk about him. This matter isn't something we can get involved in. If they have the ability, let them play. We'll avoid them as much as possible. All right. After hearing that, Yin Nuoxing, Lan Xian, and Whitey looked at each other and shrugged. This was really an unexpected disaster. A hidden ancient force that had only recently appeared. It was most likely those guys who had just recovered. Why would they look for him at this time? He didn't think they were looking for him to have tea. Sir, what's your plan? Whitey took a sip of tea and glanced at him. Yin Nuoxing twirled a lock of hair around his finger and smiled evilly. I don't have any plans. If there's nothing, then I don't have any plans. If there's something, he smiled in a low and evil voice. Then I suggest you teach them how to write the word hibernation. Chapter 1037. Although the gods are strong, they are not invincible. Even powerful Empyrean gods will fall one day. The realm of the gods is half of my home ground. I have my own ways to deal with the gods. Risks are unavoidable. If possible, I don't want to use those methods. Also, do you think that the guardian formation that I've been busy repairing is something to be trifled with? Even Empyrean gods would not be able to survive under that kind of power. The 1,000 trillion lives that were lost back then are probably unknown now. They died in vain. Yin Nuoxing pursed his lips, poured himself a cup of tea, and drank it all in one gulp. Then he said indifferently, if possible, I will continue to be a wanderer, wandering outside the world and doing my own things. I don't want unimportant people to interfere with my business. So, at this time, I advise them to behave. Yin Nuoxing stretched, picked up his teacup, and said indifferently, but these are all off-topic topics. It's fine to ignore them. Our purpose in coming to the ultimate plane region has never changed. That's the main point. As for the other off-topic topics, let's see if I'm in a mood to deal with them later. So, how do you plan to find the Azure Dragon and the others? Xiaobai asked with both hands supporting his cheeks. He said that he came to the Martial Spirit City to find someone to ask about some special areas that might exist in the ultimate plane region, especially places that might be related to the Azure Dragon and the others. But who would he ask? Yin Nuoxing's face stiffened. A drop of cold sweat slid down his face. His eyes involuntarily turned to the side. All right, I forgot that you were a guy who occasionally thinks of taking things one step at a time. Xiaobai sighed and shook his head. This guy wanted to come to the Martial Spirit City to find someone, but he didn't know who to look for. But this was normal. He was unfamiliar with the place. With a dry laugh, Yin Nuoxing's eyes wandered around the hall. After a while, she fixed her eyes on the few people who were talking just now. She had an idea and said with a faint smile, "Isn't there a gathering?" Young people talk about meaningless topics the most. They talk about topics from the prehistory to the future. Let's sneak in and take a look. Who knows, we might get some unexpected gains. Little White tilted her head and shrugged. All right, but the reason why they issued a call to gather the younger generation's experts is to mobilize others to look for you. Wouldn't you be walking right into a trap if you just charge in like this? Yin Nuoxing grinned. You want to find me through a portrait from 10 years ago? Even if I don't activate cognitive blur and stand in front of them like this, no one can recognize me. Lan Xin nodded. After all, Brother Nuoxing has become Sister Nuoxing, cough cough. Yin Nuoxing coughed dryly and rolled her eyes at this girl. But this was half the truth. The him in this life was very different from the him in the past. She didn't know what the problem was. Could it be because of the spiritual, godly physique? Waving her hand, Yin Nuoxing looked at the hall and said softly, "Where is the gathering of the younger generation's experts being held? I also want to go and take a look." The clear and ethereal voice suddenly attracted the attention of many people. But when they saw the blurry face of this person, their hearts skipped a beat. Someone upstairs smiled faintly and said, "Crooked Cloud Mountain Range." There was a big disturbance before. It's not very far from the Martial Spirit City. If Fairy wants to take a look, leave from the Martial Spirit City's north gate and fly 300,000 miles to the west. Oh, it's quite close. When will it start? Yin Nuoxing didn't pay attention to the title and continued to ask. As for the time, it will be tomorrow. This matter has been spreading for a few days. Many young experts from the Ultimate Plane region will be there. The publicity will be quite big and spread to many places. But it probably won't attract experts from other regions. Our demon clan will probably send some disciples from the royal family or the imperial family, another person said. Although he called himself a member of the demon clan, his body shape didn't look any different from a human's. He was either a powerful demonic beast that had taken human form to the extreme, or he was born as a demon expert. The imperial family. Many people exclaimed. The imperial family of the demon clan had an extremely strong appeal to the demon clan. There were many sacred beasts and divine beasts in the clan, and their influence was huge. In the demon clan, this was the clan that stood at the top of the hierarchy. Which members of the imperial family will be there? Someone asked curiously. That's hard to say, but there will definitely be some outstanding people coming. After all, it's convened by those hidden ancient forces. Yin Nuoxing thanked him and drank the tea in his cup. Then, he left the restaurant with Lan Xin and Little White. Well, the more influential the demons, the better. It'll be easier to find the news. Oh, right. Yin Nuoxing suddenly thought of something and pressed his palm on his neck. Inside his collar was Xiao Xian, who was sleeping soundly. This little guy was a little more active a while ago. But recently, he had been sleeping for a long time. If it wasn't for the fact that it wasn't winter yet, he would have suspected that it was hibernating. Seeing his actions, Little White narrowed his eyes. What do you want to fish out with that dark cloud, immortal fox? What do you mean by fishing? Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes. Dark cloud immortal foxes usually have 2 or 3 tails. 6 tails are also quite rare. There should be a clan in the Ultimate Plane region. You picked up Xiao Xian in the Ganyuan region, right? Could it be that the clan is in the Ganyuan region? Lon Xiana said. Yin Nuashing scratched his face. After thinking for a while, he was also a little troubled. I don't know. Let's go there first. Now. Little White was stunned. Let's go there first and take precautions. If someone really doesn't know me, I'll set up some divine grade formations there. Yin Nuashing yawned and said carelessly, Anyway, with my current ability, I can set up a divine rank array without the array diagram. At most it's a little tiring. No, I don't think that's the problem. Little White's face twitched violently. You're going to deal with the younger generation and set up divine grade formations? Are you trying to kill a fly with a meteor? What if there's an old monster from the divine grade? What if there's someone who thinks that I might go there? Well, these are all just guesses. I don't think anyone knows that I'm in the Ganyuan region. Yin Nuashing spread his hands. Anyway, I'm just setting it up in advance. It won't hurt to make some preparations. After I'm done, I can just cancel it without anyone noticing. Do as you wish. Little White's face was full of disbelief. In his eyes, the Crooked Cloud Mountain range was already in ruins. This destructive maniac was planning to make a big fuss. Anyway, in his opinion, he didn't need to waste his strength at all. So, he didn't feel any heartache about throwing away a few divine grade formations. Before going to the Crooked Cloud Mountain range, Yin Nuashing accompanied Lon Xian to take a stroll on the streets of the Lingbu city. Since this girl had recovered, she didn't go out much. It was rare for them to have some time together, so Yin Nuashing accompanied her to take a stroll in the city. Now, they weren't in a hurry. He knew that this girl was still somewhat conflicted about this era. It was not the era that she was familiar with. The world had completely changed. Because he knew the language of the divine grade, the two of them had some inexplicable interactions. However, it was only an interaction between the two of them. It seemed that she didn't seem to understand anything about this world. After playing for half a day, Yin Nuashing heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Lon Xian laughing happily. That's all for now. It was enough to make this girl laugh. The Crooked Cloud Mountain range was 300,000 miles away from the Lingbu city. For the divine grade, the distance wasn't very far. However, for Yin Nuashing, it wasn't very far either. Anyway, at the speed of light, he could travel 600,000 miles in the blink of an eye. If he wasn't afraid of scaring people, he could arrive here from the Lingbu city in one breath. There were many towering mountains in this mountain range. They were straight and smooth, with strong gales of energy whistling around the mountains. Some of the taller mountains were blocked by the clouds. He was afraid that they were hundreds of thousands of feet high. The mountains and peaks were divided into green and brownish yellow. The higher one went, the less green there was on the mountain, and it was completely bare. However, the mountain range below was full of vitality. It was full of green, and there were big trees everywhere. When the breeze blew, the green particles that contained strong vitality drifted and quietly dissipated in the air. However, a part of the mountain range was a little chaotic. The big trees were broken, and part of the mountain range collapsed. Obviously, there was a fierce battle here. The area affected was not small, and half of the mountain range was destroyed. This should be the place where the strong divine emperor fought with the supreme being of the ultimate plane region. It looked quite fierce, and the area of destruction was at the level of a middle-level divine grade. The tallest mountain peak was above the clouds. When one reached the peak, one could see some mountain peaks hidden in the clouds, faintly discernible. The tallest mountain peak was several hundred meters above the clouds, and at its peak was a flat platform. It was obviously cut off by someone, and there were faint remnants of energy left on the smooth surface of the mountain. Hey, this place is a little special. Yin Nuashing came here and looked down from the sky. Looking at the beautiful mountain range below, his eyes flickered slightly. What's special? What is special? Little White was surprised. How should I put it? Yin Nuashing stroked her long hair, and her eyes gradually turned blue. She looked at it and nodded. There are hidden traces in this place. It is probably a space. The arrangement of the mountains here is not natural. There are signs that someone has changed it. Look over there. Yin Nuashing pointed at the tallest mountain peak, which towered in the clouds. The other mountain peaks surrounded it in a circle. Lon Xer and Little White narrowed their eyes. The tallest mountain peak was in the middle, and the rest of the mountain peaks descended in a circular manner. The closer the mountain peaks were to the periphery, the lower they were. It was like a ring-shaped mountain with several openings. Well, the traces of man-made arrangement are too obvious. Lon Xiner nodded. That hidden space. I see it. It is over there. She pointed at a place. Yin Nuashing looked over and nodded. She cultivated the void technique, which was related to the void and space. It was not surprising that she could see abnormal spatial fluctuations. The place Lon Xin pointed at was the bottom of the tallest mountain. They flew there quickly. After a while, they landed in the forest. Looking up at the tallest mountain in front of them, they could not help but sigh. This mountain was really tall, but is not as tall as the pillar of creation, Lon Xer muttered. Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly. The height of the pillar of creation was proportional to the total length of the realm of the gods. It was neither longer nor shorter. In this world, there is probably nothing taller than the pillar of creation. Even if they stood on the night god peak, they could not see the top of the pillar of creation. The night god peak was already at the position of the ninth heaven, where even the wind element could not reach. If they want to fly there, they could only use the power of space. The chaotic power of space is coming from here. Lon Xiner pointed at the foot of the mountain. Yin Nuashing nodded. She stretched out her hand, and some light surged. She gently touched that place. Her hand seemed to touch something solid. Weak ripples appeared in the space. She pressed hard, and a similar power came from the space, blocking her hand. She frowned. It is sealed. If we want to open it from the outside, I am afraid we will need an extremely strong power. Although he said that, the next second he took out the Netherworld Ruin Sword. Then, without hesitation, he stabbed it into the space. With his current power, even a god-level space seal could not block the Netherworld Ruin Sword's power. Clang! There was a loud sound of metal colliding. The sound seemed to be mixed with the sound of chains breaking. Half of the Netherworld Ruin Sword pierced into the space and disappeared. The space in that place rippled wildly. Cracks appeared in the space around them. The space was like glass. Boom! She pulled the Netherworld Ruin Sword out. The cracks spread even faster. Not long after, the space around them exploded. Then Yin Nuashing, Lon Xin and Little White were all stunned. After the space seal was broken, the space fragments scattered and melted into the space. They thought that there would be something in front of them, such as a hidden space entrance or something else. But in the end, there was nothing. Did you forcefully open the space and destroy something? Little White was dumbfounded. His tail was wagging like a whirlwind behind him. No, I did not feel any waves of destruction. Yin Nuashing shook her head vigorously. There was no change in the space in front of them. The space cracks had disappeared, and the space fragments had also disappeared. Two people with great attainments in the power of space had been watching the whole time. In the end, they did not find anything. They could not help but feel confused. Yin Nuashing frowned. She waved her hand and took out the Book of Epics. She waved it at the space just now. Backtrack automatically appeared. This time, she also opened her evil spirit eye. Then, she discovered something. There really is something. But this, Yin Nuashing narrowed her eyes. She saw that the sealed space was only about 3 meters in size. The moment the seal was broken, there was a bright light. A blurry shadow rushed out from the edge of the sealed space and disappeared in an instant. Even she did not have time to discover it. The Book of Epics backtrack followed the direction that the blurry shadow rushed out. The scene inside was slowed down by 100,000 times under Yin Nuashing's control. However, the blurry shadow was still blurry. It was as if it could not be seen clearly or recognized by others. Therefore, it appeared blurry. At normal speed, it flashed past and disappeared into the horizon, heading east. Oh no, I once heard that there are some terrifying things sealed in the Ultimate Plane region. You didn't release one just now, did you? Xiao Bai's heart skipped a beat. She recalled an anecdote she once heard and felt uneasy. Huh? That shouldn't be the case. I didn't sense any hidden power from that thing. Tell me, what did you hear? Yin Nuashing shook his head. It's in some famous mountains in the ultimate plain region. There are some special terrains that use a powerful spatial seal. There are some inexplicable life forms sealed there, and even their souls are sealed. These sealed life forms are extremely powerful. They have the power to summon the wind and rain. If they were to come out, they would be able to massacre an entire region, Little White said sinisterly. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes. You're making it sound so mysterious. That's just what you heard, isn't it? Little White shrugged. I heard it when I was asleep. Because it was the voice of a demon beast, I paid extra attention to it. In the end, it's just some rumors and legends. I've never heard of any inexplicably powerful life forms appearing in some place and causing a bloody storm. Maybe I'm just being paranoid. You see, you didn't feel anything special just now, so maybe I'm just being paranoid. Yin Nuashing tilted her head. She really didn't feel any palpitations just now. Shaking her head, she didn't care about this kind of thing anymore. She began to fly around this mountain range. Occasionally, she would land and carve a formation that was only 3 meters in size. Then, she would carve a huge talisman. In the High Ancient Era, there were many talismans that were worthy of a name. Those talismans couldn't be activated just by carving them. You had to chant the incantation to activate them. However, I didn't learn too many of them because I thought it was too troublesome. The ones that I learned later on were all talismans that could be activated without chanting the incantation. They were actually talismans that could be activated with just a thought and energy. When he was carving the talismans, Yin Nuashing said softly, Actually, I'm more used to calling them talismans. Now that I've changed it, it has nothing to do with the word talisman. Lan Xin squatted on the ground. Mei Mao's eyes were shining. She looked carefully at the talismans that Yin Nuashing was weaving. Her thoughts were in a mess. Oh, Brother Nuashing, I don't understand. These are all, of course. Yin Nuashing smiled and dotingly patted the girl's head. A divine grade formation and one below divine grade are two completely different realms. Look, as he spoke, he immediately started to weave another talisman on the ground. It was also 3 meters in size. All kinds of mysterious patterns, divine patterns, demonic patterns, and talismans appeared. The 3 patterns blended perfectly and switched with each other. Most importantly, there were no 2 huge energy matrices at the edge of the talisman. This talisman seems to be different from ordinary talismans. Lan Xin was stunned. She raised her head and asked, Why are there no energy matrices? Because the types of talismans and fields are different. The talismans that ordinary people can understand are defined by the energy matrices. They use the energy matrices to demarcate a space and treat it as a canvas. Talismans are artists, the fields that divine talismans can reach. Everything that we can touch and the places that we can reach with our minds are all within the range that we can perform. There's no need to use crude energy matrices to demarcate the range. That's just a measure to prevent the talismans from collapsing. At our level, we don't have to worry about the talismans collapsing due to various reasons, Yin Nuashing said as he twirled his fingers. In just a few words, the talisman was completed. Even if it's a talisman that can't be performed theoretically, we can use the power of divine right to force it to work. Our will is above all rules. We can force it to work. Yin Nuashing smiled faintly. His smile was filled with confidence and nobility. Chapter 10:38. In the crooked Cloud Mountain range, Yin Nuashing and the other 2 were flying around busily. They flew around the foot of the tallest mountain peak, and then went around the outermost mountain peak to set up another circle. After a long time, they finally stopped. All right, it's done. Yin Nuashing clapped his hands and looked at the last array that was hidden under the ground. He nodded with satisfaction. It's not a simple array, right? Little White looked around and looked at him with lingering fear. When the array was set up, it released a rather shocking aura. When it was really activated, not even a blade of grass would grow in this place. Even the space would collapse. Hmm. Yin Nuashing muttered to himself and nodded. Star Jade 18 Celestial Rings Heavenlock Array. It combines attack, defense, and sealing into one. The controller of the array can use it to defeat at least 10,000 experts of the same level. Even if the enemy is 100 times stronger than the controller of the array, it will not be a problem. Well, even if the enemy is 100 times stronger than the controller of the array, it will still be the same. Well, even if that's the case, one has to be able to use it well. If one were to use it, one would be able to set it up with a wave of one's hand. Now, I have to run around to set up the array. Furthermore, its power has decreased by a lot. After all, I'm only a demigod now. Even if I rely on my powerful soul, it's still sigh, but it's enough. Yin Nuashing looked at the ground and couldn't help but sigh. If the power of the stars is endless, one can control the array and fight until the end of time. The controller of the array also doesn't have to worry about exhausting his power. He has the power of the stars to constantly replenish himself. Lon Xin Er's face twitched slightly. A bitter smile appeared on her face. Just by hearing it, I feel that it's something very dangerous. Brother Nuashing really likes to create dangerous things. Yin Nuashing grinned. I'll take that as a compliment. I'll accept it with satisfaction. Little White couldn't help but smile bitterly. The difference between him and Feng Yuang was really big. Although he was a dangerous person, he was a peacemaker in his bones. After he regained his original nature, he became an extremely terrifying and dangerous person. Well, it should be enough to deal with this matter. Yin Nuashing stretched his waist. Now, let's just wait for time to pass. The peak of the centermost mountain was extremely huge. It was a platform that had been cut open. At this moment, there were groups of people clustered on it. It was not crowded at all. There was still a large portion of space that was empty. There were also people floating on the surrounding clouds. They sat cross-legged in the air and sat on the clouds to communicate with others. Yin Nuashing and the other two stood at the edge of the mountain peak. They looked down from the clouds. After a while, Little White turned around and looked at the many young experts. She used her elbow to nudge Yin Nuashing. There are so many people here. How do you plan to get information from Azure Dragon and the others? Yes. Yin Nuashing raised his head and sighed. He touched the back of his neck and sighed. I'm not good with words. Why don't I just grab one and ask? For example, beat them up first? Little White teased. Oh, that's a good idea. I can consider it. Yin Nuashing thought about it seriously and nodded. This made Little White and Lon Xin confused. This method would cause a little disturbance. Those who gathered here were the most powerful young experts in the Ultimate Plane region. Most of them were from the Demon Clan. Their demon chi soared to the sky. However, there were very few humans. They gathered here and seemed to be a little harmonious. No one fought as soon as they saw each other. A group of young experts gathered together and discussed animatedly. There were still people flying over from afar. Many powerful figures had arrived. Swoosh! All of a sudden, a gust of wind broke the silence on the mountain peak. Numerous figures flew over from afar and arrived on the mountain peak in a flash. Powerful yet obscure energy fluctuations quietly spread out, causing some people to clamor. It was obvious that a powerful figure had arrived. To be able to cause such a reaction, it could be said that this person was the main character of the gathering, the person who had called for the younger generation to gather. The aura of a divine emperor. He's so young. The disciple behind him is also so powerful. It's really surprising. No wonder he's a transcendent force supported by such a powerful cultivator. It should be him. He's the cultivator who defeated the previous generation's sovereign list. There's so many people here. I'm afraid the sovereign list of the Ultimate Plane region will undergo earth-shaking changes. Everyone was discussing. Some people came over and surrounded the people who had just landed. However, most of them just stood aside and watched calmly. They didn't show any signs of action. Yin Nuashing glanced over. The leader of the group of people who had suddenly appeared was a man in cyan clothes. He looked about 20 years old. His bronze skin looked tough and powerful. His face also looked determined. His eyes were filled with divine light. His aura was surging and boundless. He hid it very well, but it still gave off a suffocating feeling of power. It was very oppressive. A divine emperor, probably at the middle three changes realm. His chi is very condensed, which is the peak of quality that ordinary people can reach. His chi is stable and deep, like a volcano that won't erupt. I'm afraid the divine grade secret art he cultivates is also a divine grade secret art. He seems to have just entered the divine grade secret art. Maybe he has already cultivated it for many years, so it's not surprising that he's powerful. Ordinary divine emperors can defeat him in 4 or 5 rounds. Yin Nuoxing opened both his eyes. With the Book of Epics, it was easy for him to see through a person. As for a deeper level, with his current level, he could easily be discovered if he tried to pry too deeply. Moreover, there was no need for that, so he withdrew his senses. "You can already sense these things directly?" asked Little White. The Book of Epics has 2 types of eyes. It's not difficult, but it's as far as I can go. If I probe any deeper, I'll be discovered. Yin Nuoxing smiled faintly. At this moment, a thin young man suddenly walked over. He had a timid smile on his face as he approached Yin Nuoxing's group. Yin Nuoxing noticed him. He stood alone at the edge of the cliff with a timid smile. He seemed to be very timid. His robes were somewhat tattered, as if he was isolated from the world. He had the aura of a godly venerable. "Hello, is it convenient for us to talk?" The thin young man walked over and smiled. He didn't come from any faction. He drifted alone in the ultimate plane region. He was also a Yao expert. "I saw that the few of you were standing at the edge of the cliff and didn't like to talk with others, so I came over shamelessly. Perhaps we can have a chat." He smiled faintly. Yin Nuoxing nodded. She temporarily withdrew her blurry perception and revealed her true appearance. When the thin young man saw her, a hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. The former only revealed her true appearance to show some courtesy. A moment later, she was covered up again. "Fairy, do you know what the people gathered here today are doing?" The young man straightened his expression and humbly asked for guidance. He drifted alone and hadn't gone to Martial Arts City yet. He didn't know much about many things. He only saw that many people had gathered here, so he came to join in the fun. A disciple of a reclusive faction has come out. There might be a god-level expert in his sect. Not long ago, a vast phenomenon appeared in the ultimate plane region. It alarmed these reclusive factions, so they sent their disciples out. That's about it. Now, they're looking for a person. For this reason, they've called upon the young experts of the ultimate plane region. Yin Nuoxing said softly. Her words were ambiguous, as if she was telling the truth. "A person." The young man was a little shocked. He was already shocked when he heard that there was a god-level expert. At this moment, he was even more shocked when he heard that they were looking for a person with great fanfare. Who could be so important that they would spend so much effort to find him? In his mind, a god-level faction could basically command an entire region with a single word. This, I'm not too sure. We also knew about this and felt that it was a little strange, so we came to take a look. I didn't expect that the scale would be so big. After all, he's a disciple of a faction, so his rallying power is not small. Yin Nuoxing looked at the bronze-skinned man in green with a faint gaze. She was a little puzzled. Why were these people looking for him? That person is so powerful. I feel like my eyes are going to go blind just by looking at him for a while. The thin young man shrunk his body and smiled bitterly. He was just an ordinary little monster. He practiced ordinary cultivation and climbed up in this world. He had seen many powerful people, but he had never seen a guy who could have such an intimidating aura at this realm. Fortunately, his aura is like a rainbow. Although it's full of oppression, it's condensed and not empty. However, this is not the end. There will always be someone stronger than him in this world, Yin Nuoxing said softly. That kind of realm, I haven't really thought about it. It seems so powerful. The young man laughed dryly and scratched his head. He couldn't imagine that kind of level at all. His body was just an ordinary monster. He couldn't even reach the level of a sacred beast. He could only look up to the competition at that level. You have to be more confident. Since ancient times, great talents have matured late. Just because you're weak now doesn't mean you'll always be like that. Maintain an upward heart. No matter where you go, you'll be able to gain something. Yin Nuoxing smiled faintly. She could tell that the young man was very timid. He had great reverence for some of the transcendental existences in the outside world that sounded or looked to the point that he had become timid and cowardly. As for the conversation, Yin Nuoxing had been using the book of the epoch to eavesdrop on the young man's thoughts. She didn't hear anything wrong. She reckoned that the young man was just chatting. Do you know of some of the mysterious places in the Empyrean region? Yin Nuoxing asked softly. The young man said that he was from the Empyrean region, so he probably knew a little about it. Mysterious places? The thin young man squinted his eyes. After a while, he opened his eyes and said, I do know of some very special places. Before he could finish, Yin Nuoxing said, To be honest, we're just from small clan. We were once exterminated, so we had no choice but to seal our clan's land. We only came out after a long time. I'm not very talented. This is my sister. She's the same as you. She's in the godly master realm. As for me, I've been stuck at the demigod realm for a long time. I don't know if I have any hope in this life. Sigh. I definitely can. You see, even someone like me can cultivate to the godly master realm. Fairy also said that great talents mature late. The young man suddenly said excitedly. Yin Nuoxing stared at him. He blushed and scratched his head. Lan Exiner and Little White had been listening at the side. They didn't say anything. At this moment, they couldn't help but roll their eyes. Demigod realm? He said that he had no hope in this life. Young man, the one standing in front of you, is the god of deception. He used to be a god of deception who looked down on the world. If you want to believe him, it seems that you really do. Yin Nuoxing glanced at the two of them, then said with a smile, Let's not talk about this. We came out to inquire about some things. We want to find a strong enough backer to protect our clan. It's best if it's a king of the demon clan. However, I don't think there will be one. Maybe I'm just imagining things. He seemed to be mocking himself. The thin young man rolled his eyes. He pondered for a while and said, Not really. It's not that there won't be one. Yin Nuoxing was very shocked. His eyes widened. Is there really a king of the demon clan in the Empyrean region? If there really is one, it should be in the demon realm. The young man shook his head. Actually, I'm not too sure. While I was traveling, I accidentally heard it in a restaurant. It said that in the far west of the Empyrean region, there's a place where all the beasts retreat. It seems that there's a king of the demon clans, Aura. However, I've never been to that place, so I don't know much. It's just hearsay. Maybe it's a lie. Fairy, if you want to know more, you could go to some big clans. They must know something about that place. It's hard to tell whether it's real or fake. There are many versions. Some say that it's the burial ground of the demon clan's experts, the tomb of a hidden clan, and it's comparable to a forbidden area. There's an inexplicable energy field there. It's also very mysterious. The young man scratched his head. But what's certain is that there should be something there. Although it attracts a lot of attention, not many people dare to go there. The aura emitted from that place makes all the demon clan's experts tremble. It's very difficult to even get close. Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly and shook his head. People from big clans forget it. The demon clan is not completely united. They don't have powerful strength. Speaking of which, it's the law of the jungle anyway. Big clans will look down on people from small clans. Who will help you? That powerless tone and sighing every 2 sentences made him sound like a miserable person who was struggling to survive in the cracks of a chaotic world. Little White couldn't help but roll his eyes. This guy was really good at pretending. But it wasn't just that. Those sighs were very real. Perhaps he was using the state of mind he had during the dark times. That was why he could sigh like that. At that time, he only had a group of friends by his side. Other than that, he was alone and helpless. Everyone he encountered was an enemy. He had no choice but to struggle in that chaotic time. He gritted his teeth and walked forward step by step with blood in his mouth. Others, thinking about it, Little White suddenly felt that this guy didn't seem to be pretending. Perhaps he really thought of those things and had that kind of realization. After chatting for a while, Yin Nuashing thought of something and said, "By the way, do you know anyone from the Dark Cloud Immortal clan?" Dark Cloud Immortal? Is it the Dark Cloud Immortal Fox? The young man was stunned and shook his head. Although the Dark Cloud Immortal clan isn't a big clan, it's very famous. There are many experts in the clan. It's not a big clan because there aren't many of them. But in terms of strength, it can be counted as a first-class or even superior clan in the Ultimate Plane region. How could I possibly know such a clan? Ah, wait. Although I don't know them, I seem to have seen someone. She seems to be a fairy from the Dark Cloud Immortal clan. Just now. The young man thought for a while. His eyes swept across the platform. Suddenly, he pointed to one end. There was a person standing at the edge of the cliff, looking coldly at the people clustered together. It seemed that she didn't have a good impression of them. Her eyes are cold. I guess it's not easy to communicate with her. Yin Nuashing muttered, "Brother Nuashing, you're looking for someone from the Dark Cloud Immortal clan." Lon Exen? And Mei Mao looked at his face and finally stared at the furry little fairy on his neck. She guessed something and said in her soul, "Little fairy." Yin Nuashing sighed and nodded. He didn't hide anything. Little fairy was found in the Ganyuan region. At first, it was raised by someone. I've already forgotten who that person is. I think it's probably wandering outside. Although it's not that I can't afford to raise it, and it's not that I find it troublesome. If it's really wandering outside, it's better to send it back to the clan. But these things, let's let little fairy decide for itself. Let's talk about it first. No matter what, it should have its own family, right? Even if it doesn't, it should have its own clan. Yin Nuashing sighed in his heart. He looked at Little Magic, who was nestled in Lon Exener's arms. Little Magic is different. There's no need to look for it. The clan was wiped out in the ancient age. It's the last one left. Lon Exen sighed in her heart. She looked at Yin Nuashing, who was smiling. She felt a little sad and a little sad. To be honest, they were both homeless people. However, she could see her brother Nuashing as the last place she could rely on. But who could he rely on? He had no place to stay for the rest of his life, and the world was his home. It would be a joke if he wanted a safe haven. I wonder if the 9 deities palace counts. Lon Exine tilted her head as she thought of this place. After all, it was a force that Yin Nuashing had built up. It was an extraordinary force in the realm of the gods, and it had absolute power. While she was lost in her thoughts, Yin Nuashing and the skinny young man chatted for a while. The latter saw that there was nothing to do here, so he bid farewell to Yin Nuashing and left. There were many people on the mountain peak who had come to join the fun. Many of them had already left, and there were fewer people sitting in the clouds. So, now, are we going to look for that cold woman, or... Little White yawned and said lazily. Yin Nuashing tilted her head. The expert from the Dark Cloud Fairy clan was a woman. She was not flawlessly beautiful, but she had an attractive aura. She was as bright as the moon, like a fairy who had descended to the mortal world. As Mei Mao looked around, there was a faint charm flowing around her. That was probably the characteristic of a Dark Cloud Fairy, a fox. Her aura was very cold, as if she was far away from the mortal world. Her whole body was emitting an aura that kept people away. She floated like a fairy, and her body was tall. It was difficult for people not to notice her. However, her aura was too cold, so not many people dared to approach her. While Yin Nuashing was hesitating, the bronze-skinned man smiled faintly and approached her. He said something to the cold woman, but the latter took half a step back when he walked over, keeping a suitable distance. The expression on her face did not change at all. After thinking for a long time, Yin Nuashing sighed and shook her head. Forget it. I can't talk about this. She's too cold, even colder than me. I'd better find someone else. Since the Dark Cloud Fairy clan is quite famous in the Ultimate Plane region, it's easy to find out where their clan is. I'll just send them to them. Thinking of this, Yin Nuashing lowered her head and looked at the little fairy who had formed a circle around her neck. She smiled faintly in a low voice. Little fellow, do you want to go home? Phew! What responded to him was a series of soft snores, which made him feel a little embarrassed. Lon Sheener and Little White could not help but burst out laughing. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes at the two of them and said snappily, "Let's go. Let's go to the far west and have a look." Chapter 1039. Before leaving the Crooked Cloud Mountain Range, Yin Nuashing put the magic array that she had painstakingly set up into the array map. She checked it thoroughly and made sure that there were no mistakes before leaving. In the end, the magic array that she had painstakingly set up was not used. Little White shook her head and spread out her hands. Yin Nuashing looked at him and turned back to look at the Crooked Cloud Mountain Range that had disappeared. She whispered, "I wanted to use the magic array to kill that dark and swarthy guy without saying anything. Unfortunately, there were too many people there. No matter who was looking for me and why, they posted a bounty directly. Most likely, they were enemies and not friends. Since they had shown their hostility, there was no need to worry about whether they would provoke us or not. Just kill them directly." His voice was slightly cold and his eyes narrowed. He did not know whether that group of people had come for him or for the godly body of spiritual reception. If he was really a disciple of a deity, it would be normal for him to know about this body constitution. However, it seemed that, he seemed to have forgotten that he had always been on the cusp of the storm. It was just that he did not enter the world much and did not hear much news. Previously, when he returned to the Nine Deities Temple, Princess Jean and the others also said that even though he had disappeared without a trace, many people were still talking about the godly body of spiritual reception. Thinking of this, an extremely cold light flashed in his eyes. The extremely dangerous light flashed in his eyes, but it was seen by Lon Exen and Little White, who had been paying attention to him. Both of them sighed. They did not know what this crazy guy had thought of again. Those people they really did not know what to say. Of all the people they could find, why did they have to involve this crazy guy? By the way, although we are heading west, where exactly is the land of the far west? Lon Exen muttered. Yin Nuashing and Little White's expression stiffened. They looked at each other and rolled their eyes. Who knows? Demon King City was quite close to the border of the world of the gods in the west. With the speed of the strong practitioners of gods, they could reach there in less than half a month. Although it was close to the border, it wasn't barren. It was still bustling with people, and it was one of the few big cities in the Ultimate Plane region without any humans. In the Ultimate Plane region, the demonic beasts and demon clans were evenly distributed. Demonic beasts and demon clans would appear in the mountains and forests. Unlike the human clans, who mostly gathered in the cities, there were very few people in the wilderness. Therefore, there were very few places like the Ultimate Plane region that were uninhabited. There were a lot of demonic beasts and demon clans, and any place could become a gathering point. Therefore, this big city near the edge of the Ultimate Plane region was still very popular. Although it couldn't be compared with the martial spirit city in the center, it was still a famous city within a radius of millions of miles. Yin Nuashing and the others came to the Demon King City. After walking around for more than 10 days, they were still on the move for the Pillar of Creation. The 3 pillars of the origin in the northwest of the Ultimate Plane region had been repaired. Only the 3 pillars in the southwest were left, and those 3 pillars happened to be in the west. However, that was a matter for the future. Now, they came to the Demon King City. Before entering the city, Xiaobai habitually tilted his head to look at the bounty notice hanging high up on the city wall. He couldn't help but secretly laugh. He nudged Yin Nuashing with his elbow and teased, "Look, your reputation has already spread to this corner of the city." Yin Nuashing also tilted her head to take a look. Then she rolled her eyes. There is no corner in the Ultimate Plane region. The demonic beasts and demon clans are evenly distributed. Except for the martial spirit city, you can see that the other cities are more or less popular, even if this is a big city near the border. Also, this is not fame at all, but the smell of money. A movable signboard brings the smell of money when you go out. Lon Sheener covered her mouth and chuckled. 150,000 kilograms of celestial-grade, mysterious crystals. It has increased again. Not enough, not enough. This is a divine realm expert. No matter what, he should take out a divine realm art of the divine realm. Little White laughed. When Yinuashing heard this, she was stunned for a while. Then, she said abruptly, generally speaking, when you reach the divine realm, you will start to figure out your own cultivation path. At that time, the divine power gives us great creativity. It is very easy to create some divine arts and mysterious arts. Generally speaking, we will create a path that is most suitable for our own cultivation. For example, the star art that I created was actually just a minor cultivation path for me at first. However, it seems to be very suitable for me in this life for some reasons. I used to cultivate a divine art that I created myself, which is related to the dark element, although I am still cultivating it now, and I have incorporated it into the soul-burning spell. After all, in this life, the path in front of me is more spacious, and there are more choices. I can cultivate all of them to the extreme. Divine realm experts will not easily cultivate other people's divine arts and mysterious arts of the same level, unless there is a very considerable value and obvious reference. This star art that I am cultivating now, as well as the one related to the dark element, are all things that I have explored bit by bit. In the end, when they became complete divine arts, they were officially formed. Before that, they did not even have a name. Because they were not perfect, they could not be called divine arts. In other words, from the divine realm onwards, you basically have to explore a path that is more suitable for you. Lanshiner asked. Yin Nuashing nodded. People of that level would rarely continue to learn the creations of others. Most of them would cultivate and create their own creations. The power of divine right granted them great creativity, turning everything into a feasible power. It could allow experts of that level to explore the most suitable path of cultivation for themselves to the greatest extent. Then, who is that level of divine arts for? Xiaobai frowned. Since most of the divine realm experts explore their own paths, wouldn't those divine arts be meaningless? There are still some. For example, they're used by people with low cultivation until they reach the divine realm. For example, they can provide valuable information to other divine realm experts. Perhaps they can use it as a reference. With one look, they can understand many things. Therefore, the most important thing is not the divine arts themselves, Yin Nuashing said. Walking in Demon King City, Yin Nuashing would grab a passerby from time to time. After infatuating the passerby, he would ask for the information he wanted. He even repeated this a few times because he was worried. Lanshiner looked at the passers-by, who were mesmerized by Yin Nuashing's face. She could not help but sigh and shake her head. Brother Nuashing was really completely used to this face. How is it? Xiaobai counted. This was about the seventh passerby. After they walked far away, she could not help but ask. They had come to Demon King City to rest. Another reason was that they had heard another piece of news. There should be no problem. Yin Nuashing nodded and said, let's go. Once we go to the Dark Cloud Immortal Tower. That's what the rumors say, but no one has verified whether it's true or not. However, we'll know later. A few days ago, they had settled down in a medium-sized city and rested for a while. They heard a piece of news that the Divine Lady of the Dark Cloud Immortal Clan had led the experts of the Dark Cloud Immortal Clan to various places in the Ultimate Plane region. Some people said that they were looking for something, while others said that they were trying to win over the various clans. As for the specific truth, no one knew. However, Yin Nuashing and the others heard that the experts of the Dark Cloud Immortal Clan would soon head to Demon King City. As they walked, they found that they were near this place. The Dark Cloud Immortal Clan was also a rather precious existence in the Fox Clan. They were born with immortal chi. The men of the clan were incomparably handsome, and the women were devastatingly beautiful. Their immortal chi floated in the air, as if they were exiled immortals who had descended to the mortal world. It was as if they were born from the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. They were indeed worthy of the word immortal. This clan's reputation in the Demon Clan was even greater than what the frail young man had said. It was probably on the same level as the 8 ancient families of the human clan. All the demon clan knew about them. Yin Nuashing felt that their reputation came from their beauty. After all, the members of the Dark Cloud Immortal clan were all good-looking and elegant. Moreover, they were a group of foxes. What nonsense are you thinking about? Xiaobai could not help but roll her eyes when she saw him frown. I'm thinking about some nonsense. Yin Nuashing spread out his hands. They walked through the noisy streets and stopped at the north side of the Demon King city. They raised their heads and looked in front of them, only to see a snow-white pavilion quietly standing there. It had a completely different style from the surrounding buildings, as if it was isolated from the world. However, the Demon King city was also built by the various clans of the Demon Clan. It was normal for one area to have a different style from another. However, this snow-white pavilion stood out among the buildings of the same style. It was very sudden, and passers-by could not help but take a few glances at it because it was too eye-catching. The design of this pavilion was very unique. Some of the edges and corners were engraved with totem patterns commonly used by the Demon Clan. At the top of the pavilion, there was a snow-white fox with 6 blooming tails proudly facing the sky. It was shaped like a wolf and emitted a faint pressure. It looks a little like Xiaoxian. Lon Sheener looked at the white fox sculpture at the top and chuckled softly. The fox's original appearance is probably not much different, right? Yin Nuashing tilted his head. He was too embarrassed to complain that the sculpture really looked like a wolf. Yin Nuashing could sense that the auras of the people who walked into the Dark Cloud Immortal Pavilion were a little strong. Moreover, they all seemed to be young, as if they were elites of the younger generation. This made him a little puzzled. However, after thinking about it, he guessed that it was related to the Dark Cloud Immortal clan's visit to the Ultimate Plane region. After stopping for a second or two, Yin Nuashing waved his hand and carried little magic in his arms. After entering the city, this little thing had been crawling all over his body. It even squatted on his head and looked at him from afar. However, now that they had entered the city, it looked a little strange to have a bun on his head. Hence, he carried it in his arms. Let's go. Yin Nuashing waved his hand and walked into the Dark Cloud Immortal Pavilion with Lon Sheener and Little White. The layout of the Dark Cloud Immortal Pavilion was a little simple, but it didn't lose its elegance. There was also the influence of the space array, which made the interior of the pavilion look much wider than the exterior. Just the first floor alone could accommodate thousands of people. It was divided into several floors in an orderly manner. Every floor was filled with people or groups of demons. Those who could transform into complete human bodies and didn't show the characteristics of demons were all mature demons. There were also some who still had some characteristics on their bodies, such as ears, wings, or other things. Of course, this didn't mean that those people weren't mature yet. They might have done it on purpose. Some demons like to maintain their human bodies. Some like to maintain their half-human, half-demon state. And some simply transformed into demons. The latter was another sign of maturity. After all, some demon experts were born in human form. They needed to constantly cultivate and continuously cultivate their demon bodies. Of course, those who maintained their demon forms couldn't enter the pavilion. Every floor of this 4- to 5-story pavilion was filled with people. Laughter and chatter were accompanied by waves of astonishing energy pressure that spread out in this white pavilion. If an ordinary person were to enter, they would probably be forced to kneel down by the pressure. The faint energy pressure that was secretly probing didn't cause any changes to Yin Nuashing and the other two. When they appeared, the voices in the pavilion also weakened slightly. At the same time, at least 2,000 gazes were cast towards the door below. They landed on Yin Nuashing and the other two. Then, faint gasps of surprise could be heard. It wasn't that people had seen through Yin Nuashing and Lon Xian Er's disguises. In their senses, these two people were 100% experts of the Demon Clan. It was just that they couldn't see through their auras at all. Moreover, many surprised gazes were cast towards Lon Xian. At this time, Yin Nuashing had activated his cognitive blur to the highest level. Others looked at him in a daze, so they could only turn their gazes towards the two people beside him. The silence only lasted for a moment. Everyone just curiously turned their gazes towards the people who entered the pavilion. This was a conditioned reflex. Almost everyone would subconsciously look at the people who entered the pavilion and then quickly turn their attention back to what they were originally doing. Those who were laughing continued to laugh, and those who were chatting continued to talk. Yinuashing also found a relatively empty spot and sat down. So, could there be a goddess among the younger sisters of the Dark Cloud Immortal clan who came to Demon King City? I heard that they have been running around the Ultimate Plane region recently. Someone even saw them once. All the experts of the Dark Cloud Immortal clan were seriously injured. I don't know what they got into. The goddess of their clan came back 3 years ago. I don't know what she did secretly before, but after she came back, her aura skyrocketed. The goddess of the Dark Cloud Immortal clan, who was already powerful, became even more powerful. I reckon that she can aspire to be the strongest expert of the younger generation. The situation of the goddess of the Dark Cloud Immortal clan is very special. She can't be compared to them. It's time for her to catch up with the younger generation of the previous generation. Is she that powerful? What I'm more concerned about is why the Dark Cloud Immortal clan summoned so many experts of the younger generation here. They're walking around the Ultimate Plane region. I keep having the feeling that they are doing something. Many of the people who appeared in the Dark Cloud Immortal Tower came to see the true appearance of the goddess. In the various rumors of the Demon Clan, this woman seemed to be very ethereal. There wasn't much information about her, and she didn't appear in front of the world many times. The last time she appeared, she was already very powerful. This time, after she came back from her secluded cultivation, no one knew how powerful she had become. Another group of people had been summoned by the experts of the Dark Cloud Immortal clan. Just as many people had heard, the experts of the Dark Cloud Immortal clan were doing something in the Ultimate Plane region. They were summoning some experts. The Dark Cloud Immortal Tower was hollow. The first floor seemed to be a spacious hall, and the upper floors were on both sides. On the first floor, facing the door, there was a high platform that was half a story high. On the high platform, there was only a passageway that appeared from the depths of the pavilion. There was no other way to reach the high platform. Ancient trees surrounded the high platform, and a faint mist lingered around it. It was like a completely different place from the inside of the pavilion. Arpeggios that sounded like the sounds of nature came from the hazy mist, causing ripples in people's hearts. Through the green shade and mist, one could vaguely see that on the high platform, there was a banished immortal gently stroking a pipa. She was out of this world, and the faint arpeggios outlined a subtle illusion that caused people to sink into it. A bright moon climbed up the sky. The moonlight was like water, and the distant mountains were faintly discernible. Under the moonlight, the earth was wrapped in silver. The ancient palace and pavilion were glorious and majestic. The faint arpeggios seemed to have a mysterious power that was fascinating. Oh, these arpeggios are a bit interesting. Did they trigger the rhythm of 10,000 hours? Little White said, shaking her feet. When Yinuashing heard this, he shook his head. How could it be that easy? The harmony of 10,000 hours. Although Lawyer Lu often talks about these 4 words, it's very difficult to truly achieve this. Even a shun musician would have to spend a lot of effort to truly trigger the harmony of 10,000 hours. As he said this, he tilted his head and said indifferently, however, this arpeggios are all right. They've touched upon a bit of the great Tao. If this person has never delved into music, then she has the qualifications to become a Lawyer Lu. Moreover, she'll have some achievements. Little White was a bit surprised. It's really rare to hear these words coming out of your mouth. Aren't the heavenly deities very harsh when they look at people? Yinuashing sighed softly. It's all relative. The laws of heaven and earth are so weak, and the suppression is so severe. Under these circumstances, if one has never studied music but can inadvertently touch upon some of the great Tao, that is, the essence of heaven and earth, then she has the qualifications to become a shun musician. This person's voice is very close. It's about to touch upon the great Tao and can affect people's hearts. Even if she's not the goddess of the dark cloud immortal fox, she should still be a stunning person. As Yin said this, she took a sip of tea. Among the people I know now, there are people who can reach the realm of the harmony of 10,000 Daos. I ask myself, for the time being, I can't reach it. If I forcibly use the immortal song of the great Tao, I can, but that's related to the song itself. It's not my true strength that's triggered it. Who? Little White stared blankly. After thinking for a while, she understood. Oh, you mean that heavenly deity, Xianyin. Yin shook her head. It's not Xianyin, with Xianyin's realm. If she wanted to, the laws of heaven and earth would go berserk because of her zither music, and the great Tao would collapse. Then who is it? Little White scratched his head. Foner. Yin glanced at him and said indifferently. Little White suddenly understood. A phoenix. He didn't expect this at first, because phoenixes had been in their cocoons for a long time. But it was true. If it was a phoenix, she didn't need any musical instruments to make the harmony of 10,000 Daos. His collar moved slightly, and he was stunned. Xiao Xian seemed to have woken up and was moving around inside. After a while, a little head popped out and rubbed his chin intimately. Then, she used her little tongue to lick his cheek. Yin smiled faintly and reached out to gently press this little fellow back. Before it was discovered, it was a little pet. If it was discovered to be a member of the Dark Cloud Immortal Clan, it wouldn't be fun. He hated trouble the most. It's probably the younger generation of the Dark Cloud Immortal Clan. If that's the case, it shouldn't be just their elders who are running around in the ultimate plane region. Maybe their goddess really came here in person to ask for something big. It can't be wrong. I heard last time that the goddess of the Dark Cloud Immortal Clan was injured. She didn't come here in person, and only sent the descendants of her clan to entertain the people who came here. The younger generation of a few big clans came. They can't be here to join in the fun. I didn't hear about those big clans paying attention to this matter before. Obviously, they must have communicated in private. Yin perked up his ears and heard a lot of useful information. Yin pondered and nodded. It was good that they had come. He also had some things to ask them. It would be more convenient if he could meet the so-called goddess. If he couldn't, he could look for the experts of the older generation of the Dark Cloud Immortal Clan. At most, he would show the 9 Deity Palaces sign. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.